Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, September 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees, 12 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. To avoid a full lockdown this fall, the COVID vaccination rate in Ontario has to exceed 85%. That comes from the Ontario Science Table releasing new modelling information just hours after the province unveiled the plan for this vaccine certificate. It's unlikely the worst-case scenario for a fourth wave will happen, but if it does, ICU capacity would exceed those set in the third wave. Here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
Modeling suggests if Ontario can't boost the vaccination rate and reduce the spread of COVID-19 in this province, we could be in for a nasty fourth wave. New modeling suggesting increasing vaccination to 85% of the population can slow down the Delta variant to manageable levels. Ontario's Science Table saying we need to reduce our community and social contact to about 70% of pre-pandemic levels until vaccination rates are high enough to protect the overall population. The table also confirming that Ontario is in a fourth wave of the pandemic and that its modeling does predict resulting spikes in cases will be substantial, and there could be a significant impact on hospitals and ICU units if something isn't done in the next couple of weeks. I'm Kevin Meisner.
City News time, 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Plenty of sunshine for us today. The high just 19 degrees. That's below average. The average high is about 22. Tonight, partly cloudy and 12, and tomorrow, sun and cloud, the high about 22. For today, the high near 19.
And right now, 13 degrees in Ottawa. It's 12 degrees in Smiths Falls. Federal party leaders will face off in the first of three televised debates in this federal election campaign. This one in French. The political action gets underway at 8 o'clock, and with a preview, here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
The leaders of the Liberals, NDP, Conservatives, and Bloc Québécois are going head-to-head for this French debate that will center around three main themes: the pandemic, social policies, and the future of Canada. The two frontrunners, the incumbent Liberal Justin Trudeau and the debate rookie Conservative Aaron O'Toole, likely face the most pressure as their national frontrunners. Daniel Balland, a political scientist with McGill University, tells me they'll have to walk a fine line.
You have to be careful when you talk about issues like French language, secularism, Quebec's identity, anything that we perceive as an attack against Francophone.
And the stakes are high. Even though this is a French debate, any failure or mistake will be picked up by the national media, and Quebecers are known for making big swings with their votes. The two consortium debates are being held next week. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News time, 9:03. The Chamber of Commerce says the country is missing a major opportunity to be a world power, producing minerals and rare earth elements that power everything from your cell phone to electric cars. It adds critical minerals must also be at the core of any strategy to transition to a low-carbon economy and mitigate the impact of climate change. The Chamber wants to see party leaders in the current federal election use this as one of their campaign promises. CIBC has signed a deal to take over the Canadian Costco credit card portfolio and become the exclusive issuer of Costco MasterCards in Canada. Financial terms of the agreement not available, but CIBC says the credit card portfolio has right now $3 billion in outstanding balances. Now, if you're an existing Capital One Costco MasterCard holder, you continue using that card until you receive one from CIBC. That MasterCard expected sometime early next year. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
it's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, that's it for the truce. The reported ceasefire. I would say there has been a resumption of hostilities. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Another busy day in the news game. One day closer to the start of the school year. Vaccine passports on the way in Ontario. The election platform is out from the Liberals to mixed reviews. And we have a federal leaders debate tonight in French. Hey, that's enough material to fill any news cycle. And don't you worry, we have you covered from beginning to end between now and noon and all day long around the clock here on City News and on the Rob Snow Show. Ford and Trudeau, Trudeau and Ford. You know, there were reports at the outset of this federal election campaign that the two had sort of come to a gentleman's agreement, okay? Ford will stay out of the federal election campaign, do a disappearing act, go into hiding, go into the witness protection program. And Trudeau won't portray Ford as the big bad boogeyman like he did 2 years ago, pretty much nonstop and around the clock. You remember that campaign? Every campaign stop Trudeau made in Ontario. He rarely talked about Andrew Scheer. He barely mentioned the name Andrew Scheer at all. No, it was all about Doug Ford, Doug Ford, Doug Ford, Doug Ford, buck a beer.
Conservative politicians love to say they're for the people. Exhibit A, Doug Ford. People like Doug Ford who say they're for the people. The Conservative Premier in Ontario, Doug Ford, cuts to public education, cuts to health care, cuts to the services. He cut Ontario's pharmacare program, cuts to public health, cuts to childcare. That's what Conservative politicians, Doug Ford, do.
It's called media manipulation. Okay, that's media manipulation. David, you are guilty of media manipulation, David. That's what it was like 2 years ago. But then, hey, just a few months ago, the airwaves were filled with anti-Justin Trudeau attack ads bought and paid for by the Ontario PC Party.
COVID-19 is changing. It's more deadly and easier to get. Mutant COVID variants are flying into Canada from countries like the UK, South Africa, Brazil, and India. And what did Trudeau's health minister say about protecting our border?
The more countries that have outbreaks, the less relevant borders become.
Trudeau didn't close the borders when the pandemic started. He didn't close the borders when it got worse. Nobody wants a fourth wave. It's time to act. A message from the Ontario PC Party.
You remember those ads, right? Of course you do. You couldn't miss them. Well, as I said, reports a few weeks ago when this election campaign started, the two sides had decided to bury the hatchet for the next 5 weeks. Okay. Ford will shut up and Trudeau will be nice to Ford. Maybe even say a few nice things about the guy. Well, about that, I would say that's over now. If this week has been any indication, if this week on the campaign trail has been any indication, if yesterday's vaccine passport announcement's any indication, you had Trudeau going after Ford, urging Ford to do something on vaccine passports.
Already, Premier Horgan and Premier Legault have stepped up. And I certainly hope that here in Ontario, Premier Ford steps up as well. It's time for him to listen to public health officials and leaders like Bonnie Crombie. And we'll be ready when he does.
Okay. And then yesterday, there's Ford. And what's he doing? He's bringing in a vaccine passport. But not only that, he's putting a lot of the blame on Justin Trudeau, saying Trudeau should be doing a national vaccine passport and I wouldn't have to do this. And why did Justin Trudeau call this needless election?
And unfortunately, the federal government decided to go to an unnecessary election, which I'm still shaking my head over, in the middle of a fourth wave and a pandemic.
So much for the truce, right? So much for the truce. Maybe that has something to do with the polls in Battleground, Ontario. Okay. ECO's nightly tracking has the federal Conservatives, the O'Toole Conservatives, still in the lead nationally, and it's a pretty healthy lead. 36 to 31. Okay, pretty much where it's been for the last few days. But the Liberals have the edge where it matters, and the lead in Ontario for the Liberals appears to be widening. The Liberals leading in Ontario 40 to 32 over the Conservatives. And the Liberals, they want Ontario now more than ever. Right. But Ipsos has a new poll out. And Ipsos says it's a tie in Ontario. Slight lead for the Liberals, but a statistical tie when you take in the margin of error. 35 to 33, Liberals with the edge. So whatever peace agreement there was between the Trudeau Liberals and the Ford PCs. It's gone. It's over. Resumption of hostilities. We're going to talk about all of this morning. Randall Denley's going to join us, National Post, Ottawa Citizen columnist and author. Covers the Ford government for the Post. Has a column about Ford's decision on vaccine passports. Needless to say, Randall's not a fan. That's coming up in about 5 minutes from now. And every Thursday, after the 9:30 news, we do Ontario politics this week with our good friends Lindsay Maskell and Andrew Brander. Lindsay's a Liberal, Andrew's a Conservative. Boy, and it really is battleground Ontario. And that's going to be our focus, of course, coming up right after the 9:30 news. What else do we have on the go here today? First day of school next week, right? Brett Reynolds, Associate Director of Education, Ottawa Carleton District School Board. School board meeting yesterday. Vaccine mandates in place for teachers and other staff. They get into what the classroom experience will be like, look like, for the student, the staff member in your family, what you need to know. Canada has this pledge to eventually, somehow, some way, if they can get there, if they can get here, resettle 20,000 Afghan refugees in Canada. So Refugee 613 is already hard work on the file, as it was during the Syrian refugee crisis. Louisa Taylor, Executive Director of Refugee 613, on our show this morning. And you're in the middle of it all. During our Talk Back Hour, we do that every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. It's an hour of phone calls. It's an hour of opinions. Hottest hour of talk radio in town. And this morning, hey, we've been doing this for weeks now. 3 election questions. 3 election questions. 3 more election questions for you this morning now that all the platforms are out. That's kind of our inspiration this morning. We are going to talk about balancing the budget. We are going to talk about flipping homes. Now, people buy a fixer-upper and fix it up and sell it, and they make a gazillion dollars. Should the government crack down on that? And we're going to talk about the rich. Taxing the rich. It's so politically popular to tax the rich because most of us aren't rich. Hey, you want to tax somebody else? Go ahead and tax somebody else as long as you're not taxing me. We've been doing 3 election questions every week since before the election campaign started. We have covered a lot of territory. We've covered a lot of issues. Today's questions: do you think a Conservative government can balance the budget in 10 years without making any cuts? Aaron O'Toole says a Conservative government would balance the budget in 10 years and we won't make any cuts. And some people, I think rightly so. We'll play the longer clip here. It reminds a lot of us about a big Justin Trudeau flub that still haunts him to this day. People still bring this up. They were talking about this just a few weeks ago when he said, I don't think about monetary policy. The budget will balance itself.
Infrastructure spending that actually matters to Canadians is not there. This is all about holding the course so they can look good in the next election.
So in this economic climate, how committed to a balanced budget would you be right now? Would it worry you to go into deficit in this current climate to, as you say, put more people to work?
The commitment needs to be a commitment to grow the economy, and the budget will balance itself.
The budget will balance itself, he told Peter Van Dusen, right? And the budget will balance itself. Well, doesn't it sound like Aaron O'Toole is relying on the budget balancing itself? If he says, I balance the budget in 10 years, but I'm not going to cut anything, we'll get into that. Should the next government crack down on house flipping? People buy homes, make some renovations, and sell them, quick turnaround, for a profit. Should there be a crackdown on that, a hefty tax on that? Some political parties are promising that, and Democrats and the Liberals are promising that. And on being wealthy, just who is wealthy in this country? Do you consider, this is just your own personal opinion, okay? Do you consider someone with an annual income of $216,000 a year to be wealthy? If someone's making $216,000 a year, they're in the top tax bracket. But are they wealthy? Is that enough money to call someone wealthy? You made $216,000. You must be rich. Give that some thought. We'll talk about it all after the 10 o'clock news here on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
When it came to opening the business, because I was so young, there was a lot that I didn't know about management, financial management, management of people, all around management, I think is the word that I always come back to. I think that I always had a passion and I knew that I wanted to create a space for people to get their hair done, but I had no idea, even having studied business management, what it really took to open a business as well as sustain a successful business. So in 2014, I was actually working with Angela Sutcliffe. She was my business coach at the time, and she was like, what's your niche? Like, what separates you from other salons? And when we started to really dig, it was the curls. It was the fact that we work with all curl types, curly, kinky, wavy, coily, which is how we identify our curl types. And then you have straight hair as well, of course. But you know, more than 70% of the world has some sort of curl pattern to their hair. And we just realized that that was not being addressed. It wasn't something we learned about in school. So I went to the States and I traveled all over to kind of gain the information that I have now to be able to share it with our clients and as well as with other stylists. So in March when it came, I thought it was gonna last, a week, 2 weeks, I think it started off at 2 weeks. And I was like, cool, I have 2 weeks to just relax, that's fine. So I was actually in a position where I was not happy, so to say, but I was a little bit happy, to be honest, just because of what I was experiencing personally. Now, when that extension started to happen, it was not a great feeling. It was very uncomfortable not knowing how I was going to support myself financially. So I'm so excited about the Academy. It's something that I started and I launched it during the pandemic. So I've been teaching for a number of years. I've been educating for a number of years. I educated at Algonquin. I've educated at Versailles Hair Academy. And I've also educated in my own space, in this space and my old space up on Greenbank. And so it was just a continuum of what, I've been doing for these years. When we have a client in our chair, it's not just about making your hair look great. It's about how do you go home and take what we've just taught you and emulate that. So now with a world where people want to quote unquote be diverse and inclusive, what does that really look like in a salon setting? And for me, it looks like being able to invite any curl type, any hair type really, because I can take care of straight hair types just as well as, I can take care of curls. And we cater to all curl types regardless of what you look like on the outside, we got you.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Vaccine passports coming to Ontario in 3 weeks' time from the Ford government. Let's talk about that this morning with author and Post-Media columnist Randall Denley. Good morning.
Morning, Rob.
You question in your column this morning how much this will accomplish. Why?
Because I don't think it's going to do much. Certainly for the 76% plus of people who are fully vaccinated, what it will mean is a new level of aggravation. Every time you want to go into one of the long list of businesses that are on this list, you have to present your papers, but it's not going to make you safer. I mean, the numbers they presented yesterday really spell out how safe people are if they're fully vaccinated. So the fact that I can go into a restaurant now or soon and know that, okay, there are no unvaccinated people here. They didn't really pose any significant threat to me to begin with, so it doesn't really add much for me. So what does it do for the unvaccinated? I think it's a punitive measure that I guess is the stick that's meant to encourage more people to go and get vaccinated, and maybe it will for some. But if knowing at some rational level that not being vaccinated dramatically increases your chances of getting sick and dying, that's not enough. Or not being able to go into a bar be the tipping point, I don't know. It's another one of these big sweeping measures with no real target for what it hopes to achieve, just the idea that it's something more. So we should do it because it is something more. And the thing that really concerns me about this, Rob, is when will it ever end? When we're all safe, there's no more cases, zero COVID. Nobody talks about zero COVID anymore. That's not going to happen.
Well, if I could just interrupt, we have a clip of the Premier's telling us when it's going to end. It won't last one day longer than it needs to, is what he said. Yeah, let's play the tape there, David, please. Yeah,
I do not want this to go a day longer than we have to, but we have to see what happens when everyone gets back to work, when the kids in colleges and universities get back and the students are back in school. But folks, I know it's difficult, but we have to unite.
About one day longer than it has to.
Yeah, and how long does it have to, I guess, would be the question I would have in response to that, because we're never going to reach a point of perfect safety. And up until yesterday, recently, the Ford government had been what I thought was pretty rational on that point. Look, we need to live with the idea that there's going to be more cases of COVID in the fall. The things to watch are how many people are in the hospital, how many are in the ICU, and those numbers are quite good. And, here in Ottawa, I think we've got 10 people in hospital, 1 in the ICU. So I've noticed throughout the course of the pandemic that if things are going really well, we need to take further action because things could get worse. But if things are going badly, we need to take further action because things are going badly. So it doesn't really matter what's happening. It's what people think might happen. And there's a modeling report that came out yesterday as well that, of course, as they always do, indicates that terrible, terrible things could lie ahead, although at the same time...
Might happen. The range yesterday was... I know they're just doing their best, and it's just modeling, and... but really, it could be 400 cases a day, or it could be 9,000 cases a day. Okay, sure. Okay, all right
the
then.
Weather forecast. A mix of sun and cloud with the possibility of rain.
Right.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Holy cow.
I mean, they're being pushed by this kind of thing. I don't think there's much doubt about that. But to me, if we're going to restrict life more, let's at least define what we think we're going to get out of it. And I don't see that here. And, I think people have a mistaken thought, vaccinated people, that, this is great. This increases my freedom. No, it doesn't. It means every time you walk into some place, you got to prove that you're vaccinated. Show government ID, show your vaccination papers. I go to the gym regularly, and every time I go in there, even though they know who I am, I'm the same guy I was 2 days ago, I was still going to have to show them, I'm still vaccinated, just like I was on Tuesday. What is the point of that? And the idea that the government in a few weeks is going to develop an app with a QR code that's going to be just bulletproof.
Yeah.
It's always going to work great.
Sure.
So you're going
because that's the history of government when it embraces a technology. So.
I mean, government's record is flawless. As we know. So say you made reservations to go to the restaurant, celebrate your son's birthday. You get there, you got this new QR code thing. They scan it. Oh, no, you're not vaccinated. No, but wait, I am vaccinated. Oh, I'm sorry, the code says you're not. You're all going to have to leave. I mean, you're going to see a lot of that stuff because none of these things are foolproof. They're actually better off with the paper version people have been issued, I think. But it's just one more step back from normality into the same kind of thinking we had before. And the thing that really bothered me about Ford's comments yesterday is, either we do this or It's going to be closing down the economy, folks, closing the schools, back to online for colleges and universities. The hospitals be collapsing under the weight of it. It's like, come on. You have 76% of people fully vaccinated. It's 83% got one shot. I mean, surely they're going to get the second shot. Who would shut down the economy over that, even when nobody was vaccinated? Shutting down the economy was a pretty blunt, inaccurate tool. To argue now the economy should be shut down or to threaten it, when the vast majority of people are not going to get sick.
So, Randall, he said he wasn't going to do it. And he stuck to that for weeks and weeks and weeks and took it from all sides. He didn't want a two-tiered society and all of this other stuff. What was the tipping point, do you think?
Well, this is a great thing about Doug Ford. I find, Rob, if you don't like what he's doing today, just hang on. You'll do the opposite in a few weeks. I think there's just a lot of pressure. There's pressure upward from the local public health units. I mean, they're public health people, right? You ask a public health person, should there be more safety precautions, like anytime, anywhere? Of course there should be, because that's the only lens they look through, safety precautions. So they're pressuring the government. The other parties, of course, are shocked and outraged that this isn't already in place, naturally. I don't know what they do if they were in power, but they would certainly always do the opposite of this government. Businesses, I think, are kind of like, well, what? What are we supposed to do? On the one hand, they like it, at least when it gets to the QR code stage, because, okay, we know what we have to do and everybody has to do it. But they're also going to be the people who need to enforce this at the door. You're going to have some staff member dedicated to being at the door, checking people.
Yeah.
Not all of them are going to be happy with the way it works. And you're also saying, right now about 25% of your potential customers, no, they won't be allowed in. Oh, okay. How is that a good thing? I mean, there's some assumption that, oh yeah, this is great because vaccinated people will now flock to restaurants because, well, they were so afraid to come in before. I've been to a few restaurants lately. They're full of people. I'm not seeing them being afraid. The problem restaurants have got is getting enough people to run at capacity so they can actually handle the volume.
Yeah.
So I just don't see the upside, Rob, and I think it's yet another restriction. Clearly Ford doesn't want to do it. He doesn't really believe in it. He didn't intend to do it, and you can see that from the documents that came out yesterday. Are we ready to do this? No. In a few weeks, we're going to say to people, okay, well, you got to show that piece of paper you've already got. But then 7 weeks from now, if all goes well, you'll have some cooler thing you can show that can just be scanned. So, I mean, Quebec has all that. It's in place, started Wednesday. If you think this is a good thing to do, at least they're on top of doing it. Ontario clearly didn't think it was a good thing to do. They're not on top of doing it. And there's weird exceptions, too. The server who's checking you to make sure your papers are in order, well, does that person have to be vaccinated? Well, no.
No.
They're like, oh, wait a minute. Is this a big threat or not? I mean, here's a person at the front door. If it were my business, they'd be vaccinated, but they don't have to be. So here's somebody who could be a problem, meaning every customer comes into your place. It's just, whenever you try to do these things, there's always a whole bunch of weird inconsistencies, and that's certainly the case again here. But if you broke it down and said, make a list of everything that you might consider fun. Okay, let's stop the unvaccinated from doing those things. I mean, they told us yesterday it's all based on, scientific assessment of risk and all that kind of stuff. But the commonality you see in everything that they say you can no longer do is it's fun. So basically, the unvaccinated people have been sent to their corner. They can't leave until they get vaccinated. Maybe that will encourage them. If it does, I suppose that's something. But it's a broad, sweeping policy with no real clear goals and no clear endpoint. I don't like that.
Okay. Thank you, Randall Denley.
Okay.
Talk soon. Yeah, Randall Denley. Read him today in the National Post. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, September 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees, in Smiths Falls, 14, and here's what's making news this hour. Modeling numbers are painting a pretty grim picture, that is, if worst-case scenario plays out in Ontario. Provincial Science Table says a fourth wave of COVID this fall could put more people in the ICU than were in hospital in the third wave. That table also says we need 85% of Ontario's population eligible to be vaccinated. Right now, we're at about 76%. How will the leaders fare in a face-to-face debate? 4 will find out tonight. The first of 3 debates in this federal election campaign will be held. It's in French. It gets underway at 8. Expect the Liberal leader to press the Conservative leader on issues, as the latest polling numbers indicate. With less than 3 weeks until Election Day, Conservatives have enough support to form a minority government. If you have a Costco Capital One credit card, be prepared for a new one in the mail. It won't come till the new year, but it will be from CIBC. The bank takes over Costco's MasterCard provider. CIBC takes $3 billion currently owed by Costco card holders and will issue those new MasterCards sometime in the new year. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's time for Ontario politics this week. Gang's all here. Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist, former advisor to Dalton McGuinty. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Great to hear from you. And Andrew Brander, senior consultant with Crestview Strategy, former advisor to the Ford government. Good morning.
Hey, Rob.
Great to hear from you, Andrew. So let's launch right into it. The vaccine passport. I pitched this to my listeners yesterday during our call-in segment. It was pretty much 50-50. The opponents had a slight edge in the end. We took about 25 calls or something in the hour, and it was pretty much right down the middle, though. What do you think about the announcement, Andrew, and how the Premier pitched it to the people of Ontario?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you mention the people you talk to, because obviously you look at public opinion polling and whether people are feeling more pressured to say something one way or another. Certainly doesn't really break down to be 50-50 in most of the polls that you look at. But I think that says something important about how vocal the opponents of this are. And look, what I think changed most drastically between last week and this week is, of course, the Feds put money on the table for this. And I know this is something we've talked about before in the context of childcare and long-term care, but Ford has demonstrated he has a real problem with saying no to money from the Feds. And I think ultimately that's what ended up changing his tone. But the Premier is walking a very fine line here with the civil liberties argument with his caucus. He himself had convinced many of them that a vaccine passport creates this two-tier society. It worsens socioeconomic divides. And the data supports this. A pass or a certificate impacts most the people who are already marginalized, younger, less educated, racialized communities. So look, I think he did the best he could in threading that needle yesterday.
Okay.
Starting out being clear in stating, look, this was not something he wanted to do. He explained it's strictly a temporary measure. There are exemptions carved out for some. And that this will not apply, most importantly, to any amenities that are deemed essential. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, he justifies this by saying that he can't wait for the Feds anymore. So I think the reasoning is sound behind it.
Okay, the reasoning is sound. All right, Lindsay Maskell, what did you think about how Ford pitched this yesterday?
Well, first of all, I'm happy that he did it. I think it comes quite late. It's never a bad time to do the right thing. And as Andrew pointed out, this isn't for all locations. This is for high-risk locations that could really make a difference for us, but also will actually really target people who have been a little bit slower to get vaccinated, some very young, healthy people who don't have the same concerns about hospitalization or death, but would have a big interest in being able to eat inside in restaurants and go to gyms and places where we take our masks off and are in close contact with each other. So this isn't something that is targeting marginalized communities or would be an issue. This is in the world of reopening some places that are higher risk. This is a good idea to make it safer for them. And it has definitely driven vaccine rates amongst younger populations and those holdouts that aren't anti-vaxxers, just there hasn't been the same drive or incentive because their health risk is maybe not as severe or they're not around high-risk people or in those settings or getting to work from home. So I think it's a fantastic thing. I think the pitch of, is not...
But Lindsay, what do you think was the tipping point, though?
Well, I mean...
Andrew says, if Trudeau wants to help Ford pay for it, maybe that was the tipping point. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, there was also a lot of speculation that this had been in the works for a while because obviously public polling had shown that it was widely, widely requested, basically. A lot of pressure from public health officials. And, although sometimes not in the right timing, he has always stepped up to do what is the right thing to do, including removing people who are anti-vaxxers from his caucus. So, I do think this came into a bit of election play this week to have this stop being an issue or allowing it to be a wedge issue. There's funding for it. Other provinces are doing it. It's rolled out successfully in other jurisdictions, particularly in New York. And again, this is not about everywhere. This is about high-risk, personal choice locations you want to go to, like a gym or like a restaurant. So it's I think the timing was a combination of the public pressure and the availability of funding to not allow this to be a driver. With the fact that both of these people going to the polls, one in 18 days and one in
less than a year, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I can just jump in there quickly, Rob.
Sure.
I think Lindsay's absolutely right. Lindsay and I have both worked in government. I can assure you, nothing. The target date for this is 6 weeks away for them to have this. The enhanced rollout of this app and integrated certificate, if you will. Nothing in government moves in 6 weeks. So I can assure you that this is something that they've obviously been working on, which is why I think, the holdout was in large part tied to funding. But the last point that I'd make on this, if you do look at, some of the polls, you're seeing that while 80% of Canadians, it seems, support this vaccine passport, I'd also venture to say about the same number of Canadians feel that an election at this time was not necessary. And so I think Ford finally found a sticking point as to, a reason to justify moving ahead at this time while leveraging the anger that people feel over having an election at this point.
All right. Okay. Well, let's move along because Trudeau on the campaign has been mentioning Ford, and Ford mentioned Trudeau yesterday. I just want to play. I know that this media manipulation drives Andrew crazy, so we're just going to play it one more time, just to remind people what it was like 2 years ago when Trudeau was out campaigning and Ford was public enemy number one.
Conservative politicians love to say they're for the people. Exhibit A, Doug Ford. People like Doug Ford who say they're for the people. The Conservative Premier in Ontario, Doug Ford, cuts to public education, cuts to health care, cuts to the services. He cut Ontario's pharmacare program, cuts to public health, cuts to childcare. That's what Conservative politicians, Doug Ford, do.
I really need a new ringtone, so you've got to get
All right. Well, see if David can email you the attachment. But hey, the Ford team, they give as good as they take, because it wasn't that long ago that, remember, the Ontario PC Party was running attack ads against Justin Trudeau.
COVID-19 is changing. It's more deadly and easier to get. Mutant COVID variants are flying into Canada from countries like the UK, South Africa, Brazil, and India. And what did Trudeau's health minister say about protecting our border?
The more countries that have outbreaks, the less relevant borders become.
Trudeau didn't close the borders when the pandemic started. He didn't close the borders when it got worse. Nobody wants a fourth wave. It's time to act. A message from the Ontario PC Party.
Man, oh man, that could be a Harper attack ad. It's just so Harper-esque. Nevertheless, there was supposed to be a truce, but they're at each other again. Play the Trudeau Ford going after Ford on vaccine passports and whatnot, David.
Already, Premier Horgan and Premier Legault have stepped up. And I certainly hope that here in Ontario, Premier Ford steps up as well. It's time for him to listen to public health officials and leaders like Bonnie Crombie. And we'll be ready when he does.
And Ford was given it back yesterday.
And unfortunately, the federal government decided to go to an unnecessary election, which I'm still shaking my head over, in the middle of a fourth wave and a pandemic. It was just 3 weeks ago, said they weren't going to have a national passport. Instead, they decided to go with an unnecessary election.
Okay, what happened to the truce, Andrew? It appears to be over. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think both Lindsay and I asked how long that would last. You know what? Honestly, not surprised to see it done. However, was surprised to see that Trudeau was the one that took the first shot, and ultimately, I think when the Prime Minister's team made this arrangement with the Ontario government, things were looking good for the federal Liberals. You know, they were about 10 points ahead in the polls.
In Ontario,
exactly. And, you know, they thought that they could have run the kind of positive campaign that they probably intended to, and that they tried for the first few days of this election campaign. Unfortunately for the federal Liberals, Erin O'Toole has done a very good job at insulating himself on these issues. In the first, in the first few weeks of this campaign, we've seen them try to paint Erin O'Toole as anti-choice, a climate change denier, a racist. and none of which has really stuck. So for them, for the federal Liberals, this is them just going back to the tried and true, what they've done before. They're reverting to old tactics and hoping for the same result.
Okay. What has caused this resumption of hostilities, Lindsay Maskell?
Well, to be clear, I think it is just on this one topic, right? We have not
so far.
So far, yes. But this has been a thread for weeks, actually, about the polling, about the calling for a vaccine passport, as announcements happened of other jurisdictions bringing them in, the rates going up. So this has been a long discussion. So I would like to be optimistic that this might be a one-off public health item as opposed to an all-out fight happening again. It definitely has, when it comes to COVID, with the responsibilities, they land both firmly on both government shoulders. But obviously, the vaccine passport in jurisdictions with the fact that our shots came from the province, it is essential that those come from the province and that the feds support that with money. So, I mean, I think this maybe plays to both of their advantages. They've, Ford gets to deliver on something the public wants, and and the Trudeau government is committing to fund it. So I'm not sure that this actually does any of them harm, and it probably is a good tension for both of them, and that they both win in delivering this for Ontarians.
Interesting take. Okay, we'll be right back. We'll talk a little bit more about the battle between the Fords and, in particular, Bill Blair, who used to be the police chief in Toronto. I'm sure Lindsay and Andrew can give us some of the backstory there. All that and more when we talk about Ontario politics this week. Part 2 coming up. Rob Snow Show on City News.
Opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me, people don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, guests, ladies, what they work for me, I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew it that we have to wait, and we knew it that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song for my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Wedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to, I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Lindsay Maskell, Andrew Brander join us every week. We talk about Ontario politics this week. And give us some of the backstory, because once Ford started going after Mr. Trudeau on the needless election and the need for a national vaccine passport, a statement came, but it wasn't from Mr. Trudeau, it was from Bill Blair. And these are two kind of warring factions, Bill Blair and the Fords. What's the backstory there, Andrew? What do you know about it, Andrew?
They were certainly needling the premier yesterday, and again, this is part of their efforts to draw Ford into the federal election campaign, which the Liberals obviously have made the calculation that it's a win for them. Certainly, long history between the Ford brothers. And Chief Blair, obviously this conflict born out of Toronto City Council reached the boiling point in 2014, where the Fords accused the chief of putting surveillance on them. They believe these videos that some of your listeners will remember, the self-described drunken stupor, the cocaine videos,
crack smoking video.
Right, exactly. The Fords believed that these were coming from the surveillance of the TPS. In response, they launched a complaint with the independent police review director, saying that they were being harassed. They later got slapped with a lawsuit. And were forced to sort of make a very public apology. So, given this history,
so they don't get along.
No. Needless to say. They don't get along.
All to say, Lindsay, they have some history by the sounds of it.
Well, and it goes back a lot further than that. Because,
okay.
We all know Rob Ford is as the former mayor, and so many people forget that Doug Ford was a councillor before he ran.
He was a councillor, one-term councillor.
Yeah. So there was this. So there is a long history, but there's also a brother you don't hear about very often, and they are a family that has a long history with the law in Toronto, going back well into the 80s. So it is including people that married into the family. So there's a long history there of interactions with the police that goes well into goes even before Bill Blair's term and far-reaching well into afterwards. So there is not a love loss there, but you also see that in the way that the Ford government really think about the issues we had at the beginning of his first term about trying to direct the police and bring in, his one contact into the
OPP commissioner controversy and everything.
And so there were some movements that we saw early on in the mandate that, kind of doesn't typically fit with the way people approach law and order in government, and that comes from their personal family background. Now, all families have their issues. All families have that person that has had some struggles, but they have had a very, very rich history in
colorful. Yeah. Okay. How much time do we have here? 3 minutes. Okay, not a lot of time. So 905. Okay. So Ipsos basically has it as a statistical tie in battleground Ontario for the federal election campaign. Vote-rich Ontario, seat-rich Ontario. And the 905 is so often called the most important region to win in the entire country. Okay. In your experience, what is the key to electoral success very quickly in the 905? Lindsay Maskell.
So ran political operations for this area and general campaigns, and it is affordability and the things that keep people between themselves and the things they love. So the transit, the child care, those issues that are pocketbook issues for the families that are living and working in the 905 for sure.
Transit and child care. What about traffic?
They're drivers, right? So
okay,
if your train,
so not necessarily GO trains, but
the most will drive to a GO train. So
driving to a GO train,
all of that affordability things that keep you between you and the things you love.
All right, gotcha. Okay, Andrew. 905.
I completely agree. With all respect to our Ottawa listeners, this is Canada's heartland. It's vote rich. It's in the 60 seats that span between Oshawa and Guelph right now. The Tories only hold 4 of these, but I couldn't agree more. With Lindsay.
Hold on. Just let me jump in there. There's 60 seats. You said between Oshawa and Guelph, there's 60 seats. And how many do the Conservatives have?
They hold about 4, maybe 5 of them.
4 or 5? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's it. And so I agree with everything Lindsay said. The number one issue is affordability here at its core. How that manifests may look different election to election, but these are questions around quality of life. Where we see the issues of transit, infrastructure, traffic, those types of things, well-paying jobs, and its cost of living, price of homes, affordable child care. These are all issues that are top of mind for voters in the 905.
Okay. Always great to hear from both of you this week. Thank you so much, and we'll talk next week, and who knows what the polls will look like then. Thank you again. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep, that is Ontario Politics This Week with Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist, former advisor to Premier McGuinty, and Andrew Brander, senior consultant with Crestview Strategy, former advisor to the Ford government. Still ahead, Louisa Taylor, executive director of Refugee 613, and Brett Reynolds, associate director of education, Ottawa Carleton District School Board. But coming up after the 10 o'clock news, as always, you're in the middle of our program. It's the Talkback Hour and this week's 3 election questions on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
101 FM in Smith Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, September 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees, in Smith Falls, 14. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Vaccination rates need to increase in our province if we want to avoid another lockdown. The Ontario Science Table releasing the latest COVID-19 modeling. This happened late yesterday afternoon, warning in a worst-case scenario, the fourth wave could be worse than the third. Here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
The Science Table says at minimum, Ontario needs to limit social contacts to 70% of pre-pandemic levels and boost the overall vaccination rate to 85% to keep COVID cases to around 500 a day into October. The province is stalled with about 76% of people 12 and over fully vaccinated. If nothing changes, the worst-case scenario as people go back to their offices and school in the fall, Ontario could see 4,000 to 9,000 new cases a day, well above the peak of the third wave. Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kieran Moore, says back to school we'll see a lot more community interaction.
We'll have to watch as students return. It's not necessarily students in the classroom. I truly do believe we have increased the safety of the classroom through all of the investments we've made over the last several months.
NDP leader Andrea Horwath wants the Ford government to reduce class sizes. Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca questions why the modeling is being released now, just a week before back to school. Kevin Meisner, Queen's Park.
City News Time, 10:02. A portion of Vanier Parkway closed after a crash involving a school bus this morning. That closure on the parkway between Donald and Queen Mary. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Plenty of sunshine for us today. The high just 19 degrees. That's below average. The average high is about 22. Tonight, partly cloudy and 12. And tomorrow, sun and cloud, the high about 22. For today, the high near 19.
And right now, 13 degrees in Ottawa, 14 degrees in Smith Falls. Ottawa police are looking for security or dash cam footage after a home invasion in Orleans. It was about 4:30 yesterday morning. Two people broke into a house on Waterfern Way. Two people in the home forcibly confined, one assaulted, suffering minor injuries. Home security system went off, sending the suspects fleeing from that scene. Police are also looking for eyewitnesses that could help out in this investigation. Remnants of Hurricane Ida dumped historic rain on New York City. At least 9 people have died, linked to flooding in that region as it swamped the subway, cars, and submerged vehicles and homes.
Ida made landfall in Louisiana, but its remnants walloped the Northeast.
This storm was horrible.
That guy in Queens.
It actually flooded the entire street. It was up to my chest.
Streets became rivers from more than 7 inches of rain in New York City.
When the water came through the walls, it trapped me.
He and his family needed rescue on Staten Island.
Trying to scream to me to get out.
8 dead in the city, more death in New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
Horrible. I mean, you never expect anything like this to happen in this area.
Mass transit is stalled. Major roadways are still flooded. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
One Afghan ally who worked and fought with the United States for years is shining a light on the desperate situation of those who have been left behind in Afghanistan.
He's an Afghan translator who's become the anguished voice for thousands of America's allies left behind. Mr. President, save me and my family, Mohammed told reporters, using a fake name while hiding from the Taliban. Don't forget me. Mohammed's desperate plea making it all the way to the Oval Office. That's because 13 years ago, Mohammed helped rescue President Biden, then a senator, from an Afghan snowstorm. The White House promising to help him get out of Afghanistan, but questions remain about the fate of so many others who simply won't make the headlines. Jordana Miller, ABC News, Jerusalem.
And I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Well, lately, every Thursday, we've been doing 3 election questions, so welcome to another Thursday and say hello to 3 more election questions. At 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Love to hear from you. Question number 1 on balancing the budget. Do you think a conservative government can balance the budget in 10 years without making any cuts? Is that believable for you? Do you believe that's even possible? Balancing the budget in 10 years without making any cuts. Question number 2. Should the next government crack down on house flipping? This has become I wouldn't say a big story in the campaign, but a story in the election campaign. The idea that we have people who buy homes, fixer-uppers, and they do renovations, and they turn around and in a short period of time, say a year or so, they sell them and make a tidy little profit. Should we crack down on that kind of thing in an attempt to cool the housing market? How would you respond to that at 750-1310, 750-1310? And question number 3 is someone who makes an income, talking about taxing the rich here, someone who makes an income of more than $216,000 a year. $216,000 a year. Is that person wealthy? I'm putting up my air quotes here. Wealthy. Do you consider someone making $216,000 a year to be wealthy? Top federal tax bracket applies to people earning, according to my Google search this morning, $216,511 a year. And up from there, okay? Federal income tax rate, 33%. Is someone making that kind of income wealthy, in your opinion? Pretty good money, but, is it wealthy? Does it make you wealthy? So give those questions some thought, and then give me a call with your answers, and we'll see where the hour takes us. We started doing the 3 election questions talkback hour a couple of weeks before Trudeau made it official and called this snap election. And I have to say once again, I really enjoy the conversation. There's this narrative out there that people aren't tuned into the election, people aren't paying any attention to what's happening out there on the campaign trail. They're not watching the news. They don't really care what's going on in the country. Now, maybe I'm just in the Ottawa bubble. Maybe I'm just living in my own little la-la land, in my own little Rob Snow news bubble. Me and David. But I have to tell you, when we do 3 election questions, I talk to people who are very tuned in, care deeply about the issues, very interested in how the election turns out. So, the questions again. Do you think the Conservative government can really balance the budget in 10 years without making any cuts? Should the next government crack down on the flipping of homes? And if you make $216,000 a year, are you officially wealthy? Wealthy. I came up with those questions today because they're in the news to a certain extent, loosely based on what the main party leaders are pitching in their platforms. So let's get to it here at 750-1310, Talkback Hour to the South End. Mark, you're on City News. Mark.
There's no way Aaron O'Toole can balance the budget in 10 years without cuts, and he should not have made that pledge. First of all, we don't know when this pandemic is going to end. We're all praying that we can get the schools and universities back running normally this month.
Yeah.
But I thought that was going to happen in September of 2020. Until we know when this pandemic ends, how much we'll have to continue.
So how would you answer that question? How would you answer that? He was asked, what are you going to cut? You say you're going to balance the budget in 10 years. What are you going to cut? How do you answer it if you're a politician?
You should.
Because you say, if you say, well, I'm going to cut this, that, and the other thing, you're committing political suicide, right? So.
Well, I don't know if I could name specific cuts. I would say, without BSing anybody, that I'd have to evaluate the situation. I mean, first of all, our population is going to age in the next 10 years.
Oh, yeah. Well,
there's going to be a lot more healthcare spending.
Yes.
Thirdly, at some point, interest rates are going to go up.
Yeah.
So the cost of servicing the debt is going to go up.
Yeah.
You can't balance the budget.
All great points, Mark. All great points. Okay, so let's move along to question number 2. Should the next government crack down on the flipping of homes? Home flippers.
If there's any abuses, yes, but that's only going to marginally affect the problem. The problem is there aren't new houses being built.
Not enough houses.
Increasing supply. You see, the matter of flipping homes just affects the current supply. It doesn't create new ones. And the barrier to creating new houses is, as Ian Lee has correctly identified, local politicians
And there are zoning regulations. Yeah, okay. All right, $216,000 a year puts you in the top tax bracket, and they're being identified over and over and over again by politicians on the left as people who are taking advantage of the system. They're jumping through hoops. They're using loopholes, exploiting loopholes, and they need special attention. Are you wealthy if you're making $216,000 a year?
Not if you have to spend $1 million to buy a 4-bedroom home in the suburbs. Certainly, probe the loopholes. But the idea, like $216,000, that you're among the super rich and you can be hit by a special tax. No, that's
okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. You've got us off to a great start. To Drummond Township, Roger. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir. Do you think Aaron O'Toole can balance the budget in 10 years without cutting anything? Is that believable for you?
Yeah, I think it's believable, Rob. Okay. To me, the roadmap to there would be to, like I've been saying many times, have an energy corridor going from one end of the country to another. We have lots of oil and natural gas. We know, I won't get into how ethically sound it is. It's among the best in the world. If China and India would go on natural gas instead of coal, look at the money that could be made there, and all our rare minerals, and never mind like even the Ring of Fire,
Yeah.
And a lot of waste in government, and I'm talking about corruption from this Liberal administration and during the Kretsch year. A lot of money being siphoned off. Well, just one example, that $600 and some million that went to an ex-Liberal MP that didn't run in the last election to make ventilators, who had no skill at all. And where's that money gone? And that's just a drop in the bucket, Rob. We could build our when Mike Harris came to power, what he did, he decided to lower provincial taxes, and then the economy grew. People had more money in their pockets. They're able to spend more. Yeah, I think we can get out of it. And we don't need to have all these frivolous things that the government supports right now,
Right, but then if you're talking about we don't need all these frivolous things, then you're talking about cutting stuff, and he says he's not going to cut anything.
Well, you cut the crap for a start.
Cut the crap.
Rob.
Okay. I mean, well, maybe Mr. O'Toole has to cut the crap then. Okay.
Well, you know something, Rob?
All right.
If he says that he's going to cut things, you think he's got a hope in hell of getting elected?
No. It'd be a repeat of Tim Hudak. Okay. Should the next government crack down on the flipping of homes?
Well, you were talking about the rental business.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody buys an old fixer-upper, like the commercial, we buy ugly houses, and if they turn around and they renovate them and spend a lot of money on them, they have a right to make a profit.
Okay.
That's not the problem with the housing issue at all, just like that gentleman said before me.
Build more houses. Build more houses. Yeah, okay. If you're $216,000 a year, you're making $216,000 a year, are you wealthy?
No, you're not, Rob, because
you're not wealthy.
Close to 50% is taxed.
Yeah.
And in today's market, like what are you going to get if you have a household income, say, of $100,000 clear? Well, you better not have an exorbitant house, cars, and then everything all the energy and everything is going up. No, you know what? If they want to put a benchmark on the ultra-rich, you know what you can start with, Rob? They can start with what's Jagmeet Singh's family wealth worth and the Trudeau family. Well, that would be the benchmark for the ultra-rich, because these are the people that are making $216,000. I got a friend who's a licensed plumber. He grosses over $200,000 a year just on a regular weekly hours, and he sees about half of it. How much more are we going to hit people for to go out there and try to do better?
Well, yeah. When you get to these upper tax brackets, if you're in that tax bracket, I believe now in Ontario it's 53%. They're taking more than half right off the top, right?
We've never seen that for ourselves, but I mean, we live within our means. But that's not ultra rich.
Not ultra rich.
No,
okay, yeah. Well, I'm not even saying ultra rich. I'm just saying, are you wealthy? Let's take one more. Why not? 750-1310, 3 election questions. Gary in Ottawa, you're on City News. Gary?
Yes, Rob.
Yes, good morning, Gary. Do you think a Conservative government can really balance the budget in 10 years without making any cuts?
Yeah, I mean, like your previous caller said, yes, I do.
They do?
They can do that. Okay. I mean, they've done it before. I mean, just don't introduce anything new that's frivolous. I mean, I guess, like you said, you can't say you're going to make a cut because you're not going to get elected. But you can choose not to renew programs and the like. So I do think it can be done. It's not going to be easy.
All right. Okay. Should the government crack down on house flipping?
Nope. I mean,
no. Okay.
I'm a capitalist kind of guy.
Yep.
All for making profit. Yes, you need to. The housing crisis is a bit of a challenge. There's no doubt about it. It's a supply and demand, like your previous two callers have said. I mean, my daughter and son-in-law are in their mid-20s to one of your comments you made before you got into the talkback hour. I mean, they're actually following the election very closely, and they've never voted in their life before, and they're going to vote this time.
Okay. And at $216,000 a year, if you're making that kind of money, would you consider that person to be wealthy?
Well, I'm one of them.
Okay.
So do I consider myself wealthy? I'm well-to-do. I wouldn't say wealthy. I do think, cutting down on the loopholes is absolutely the problem. I can say, directly to you, I don't do any loopholes. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I know lots of people that do. That's where you should cut down, and that's where you're going to make a ton of money against, for the government and for the rest of us.
All right, Gary. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There you go. Bye-bye. 3 election questions. That's how we do it on a Thursday morning here on the Rob Snow Show. Take part, will you, at 750-1310. This is City News.
The food cupboard started about 25 years ago. Again, it was a very small operation in the basement of a church. And we have been expanding to the point where we needed to have a new facility. So in discussion with the city of Ottawa and Jan Harder, the local representative here, we came to this location, which is about 2,000 square feet, located in the Walter Baker Center. We've been here for about 2 years, and it is much better. It gives us a much broader opportunity to serve our clients better. It's a fairly affluent community in Barrhaven, so you wouldn't think that people would really need to have a food bank or a food cupboard. But people sometimes have a temporary loss of their job, maybe new immigrants or refugees to the community. Maybe there's been an injury in the family or something like a pandemic that causes people to run short of food during their monthly requirements. So we offer any clients who come and live in our catchment area the opportunity to pick up an order of food every 3 or 4 weeks. The need varies from time to time. We have expanded our offering to include quite a few perishables, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, vegetables, fruit. But people I think know that we need cans of beans and stuff as well too. One thing that we're consistently short of sometimes is personal hygiene products. You go to the grocery store, you buy your toothpaste and you buy your deodorant and shampoo there. People don't automatically think that to donate those kinds of things to a food cupboard. So we end up buying quite a few of those things from time to time. The pandemic has affected us like it has everybody. Initially, we had to stop the grocery store food donations so that we didn't have any risk of contamination and to have a significant number of volunteer work to be done in our facility. We have a storefront, so it's like a mini grocery store where you take a cart and you go around and pick out the things that you want. That doesn't work during the pandemic to maintain social distancing and so on. So what we have now is our clients can come in one at a time, they make an appointment, they stand behind a line, and they direct our volunteer to, I'd like Kellogg's Corn Flakes rather than Harvest Crunch, to pick the food that they would like off the shelves according to the allocation, depending on the size of their family. And then they take it out, load it into their vehicle or whatever, bring back the cart, we disinfect everything, and prepare for the next client. We are very blessed here in Barrhaven. We're a totally volunteer organization. So if you give a dollar to us, it goes to purchasing food or to provide some service to our clients.
Your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
3 election questions. Do you really think a conservative government can balance the budget in 10 years without making any cuts? Cuts. Should the next government crack down on house flipping, the flipping of homes? And is someone who makes $216,000 a year, do you consider that person to be wealthy? They're in the top tax bracket, and they're certainly in the sightlines of left-wing politicians, but are they wealthy? Now, on balancing the budget, The promise from the Conservative leader, Aaron O'Toole, is a balanced budget within 10 years, and he claims that he can get the government's balance sheet back into balance without any cuts. Is that possible? Do you believe him? Do you think we can grow ourselves back to a balanced budget? Because that's what O'Toole is telling us. That's what he's pitching us, right? And look, I can't be the only one who thinks that when he says something like that, it's a lot like the line that Justin Trudeau was famously spouting back in 2014, the infamous "the budget will balance itself" line.
Infrastructure spending that actually matters to Canadians is not there. This is all about holding the course so they can look good in the next election.
So in this economic climate, how committed to a balanced budget would you be right now? Would it worry you to go into deficit in this current climate to, as you say, put more people to work?
The commitment needs to be a commitment to grow the economy, and the budget will balance itself.
And the budget will balance itself. And you remember that. Peter Van Dusen of CPAC, the host. The budget will balance itself. People still trot out that line. People still bring up that line when they talk about Trudeau's management of the government's finances, his overall grasp of fiscal issues. They were talking about it just a couple of weeks ago when Trudeau says he doesn't think about monetary policy, he thinks about families. For a lot of us, it was like, oh, kind of like the budget will balance itself, right? So when I think about that line, the budget will balance itself, I'm also reminded of a campaign stop that Stephen Harper made in Hamilton in 2015, the doomed 2015 campaign, and he was asked about budgets balancing themselves, and this is how Harper described it. Okay, go ahead and play that.
Justin Trudeau says he doesn't have to explain how he will pay for his promises. Once again, tens of billions of dollars of new spending because, as he famously announced, the budget will balance itself. Do budgets balance themselves in Hamilton region here? Well, actually, friends, let's be fair. Justin is now changing his tune. He now says today he will run a deficit, a modest deficit. I guess it turns out the budget doesn't balance itself after all. But he'll run he says, a modest deficit, a tiny deficit, so small you can hardly see the deficit. That's what he says. A modest deficit, and only for 3 years. Only for 3 deficits. Three modest little deficits. And maybe $10 billion each. Modest $10 billion deficits to start with. Friends, we've gone through this before. Look at the mess in Ontario with the modest deficits of a Liberal government.
Stephen Harper, 2015, Hamilton. He turned out to be right. It didn't do him much good back in 2015. He was right, but he still lost the election. But I wonder what that Stephen Harper would say to this Aaron O'Toole. All right, that's what I want. Do budgets really balance themselves? You're going to rely on economic growth, and the budget is going to balance itself? Sounds a lot like Trudeau circa 2014 to me. But anyway, Murray in Kemptville. Murray, good morning. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah.
Answers to your 3 questions and then some very brief, exceptionally important information for voters. Question 1,
yes.
Budgets don't balance themselves. They have to, government spending has to be very carefully and responsibly managed at all times, no matter who the party.
All right. Should the next government crack down on flipping of homes?
I don't agree with that, simply because one of your previous callers made good point. It's a supply and demand thing. I'm not sure we want to that we want to see the government getting into any kind of control mechanism in the free market.
If you're making $216 grand a year, are you wealthy?
You are comfortable but not wealthy.
Comfortable but not wealthy. Okay, what's your very important information there?
Experience last night. I went into the Elections Canada site to check our voter information, wife and I.
Yeah.
I couldn't get past the postal code. Shorten it down, I tried 5 times, phoned the national Elections Canada number. They were exceptionally helpful. They tried. They couldn't get in. My postal code, Kemptville, K0G1J0, for all intent and purpose, does not exist, or at least last night it did not exist in their database. The gentleman that I spoke to mentioned that I was not the first to call with a similar problem. There are other postal codes that have it's been determined the result of people trying to check. They are not accessible. People can't get in to access their information. Their postal codes don't exist. There are at minimum three more postal codes. He gave me my local returning office number. I talked to them just to reassure folks. In my case, our case, we can go to that office prior to the 14th, vote in advance as long as we have proper ID. So in a fashion, Rob, it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. My very, very great concern, and I talked to our MP's office just a short time ago, this could conceivably affect the mailing out of voter cards. People are, we're all hyped
interesting.
up, and it's distinctly possible that if a person does not...
If you don't have a postal code, how do they mail you your mail-in ballot?
You won't get it, and the problem is a lot of people might be very, very turned off at that, and at this particular juncture in our political history, we very much need all Canadians out to vote, to voice their opinion, and I hope we'll have change, because we need responsible and much more thoughtful and ethical. I'm lecturing and
okay. Well, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to stop you there then, Murray, because I want to take one more call here before the bottom of the hour news. It's Kate in Bishop's Mills. Kate.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah. Good morning. Do you think a conservative government could balance the budget in 10 years and not cut anything?
There's no way. There's no way any government can balance the budget that we have without cutting anything. And I mean, cuts need to be made everywhere in the government. So, no, that was a stupid thing for him to say.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay. All right. On the next question, which is about flipping homes. People buy fixer-uppers, do some renovations, sell them for sometimes enormous profits. Should the government crack down on that?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay.
That's free enterprise. The government has no business sticking their heads in there. I mean, good for people that can do that. There's it's a small minority of people that don't have a lot of money that can use their line of credit or whatever and do it themselves and fix it up themselves to make a little bit of profit. People that don't have pensions or whatever. No, absolutely not.
Okay. Interesting. If someone is making $216,000 a year, would you consider that person to be wealthy?
Well, if I was making that, I'd consider myself wealthy for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you. 3 election questions this morning on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show, brought to you.
News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, September 2nd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 14 degrees, and here's what's making news at this hour. It is another spike in COVID cases in the province today. Ontario reporting 14 more people have died. 10 of those, though, were from over a week ago. There are 865 new cases today of COVID-19. 39 of them are in Ottawa, 24 in Eastern Ontario's health unit. Leeds, Grenville, Lanark has 1. Renfrew has 2 new cases. The number of cases come from over 27,200 tests. A positive rate is 3%. Federal leaders will compete tonight in their first televised debate. This could be critical in the outcome of the September 20th election. 4 of the leaders, Liberals Justin Trudeau, Conservatives Erin O'Toole, Bloc Québécois Yves-François Blanchet, and the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh will take part. Green Party and the People's Party were not invited. Ottawa police looking for security or dashcam footage to a home invasion that happened in Orleans. It was about 4:30 yesterday morning. 2 people broke into a house on Waterfern Way. 2 people in the home forcibly confined. 1 was assaulted with a weapon, suffering minor injuries. The home security system went off, sending the suspects fleeing from that scene. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues
with 3 election questions. We do it every Thursday. Do you think the Conservative government can really balance the budget in 10 years without making any cuts? Question number 1. Should the next Conservative government, or should the next government crack down on the flipping of homes? You have the Liberals and the New Democrats are promising to crack down on home flippers. Okay. Should they? And is someone who makes $216,000 a year, do you consider that person wealthy? They're in the top tax bracket. The Liberals are going to go after them. Are they wealthy? At $216,000 a year, are you wealthy? If you make that kind of money, are you wealthy? Steve in Ottawa, you're on City News. Steve, good morning.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm great, sir. Do you think a Conservative government can balance the budget without making any cuts? Balance it within 10 years and not make any cuts?
I don't know about cuts, but there'll be a lot of attrition, and I think a lot of the people that are on pensions are going to be dying off, so I think they'll do it through contracting if they're going to do it. And they'll just hire people with no pension for a third of the pay.
Okay, so is that a yes?
Well, I think it's possible.
It's possible. Okay, all right. Okay. Should the next government crack down on house flipping homes?
No, they should crack down on the zoning. They need to let farmers sell all the land that's facing the road and let people build houses on it. I mean, contractors don't need to be the only people building houses in this country. And I don't know. Again, I don't think that's a problem because, like I said, 70% of homeowners are over 60 years old. I mean, most of those people are going to be dying off in the next 10 to 20 years. So I think there'll be a lot more availability.
You're like expecting an extinction event, Steve, by the sounds of things.
Well, I mean, it kind of is, right? Like, you look around downtown Ottawa, there's no young people. It's all old people that own these houses. All young people are living on the outskirts, buying up the condos in Barrhaven and Canada and Stittsville and, further out of town because they can't afford to live in the city. Right. So,
okay.
I mean, we have an aging society. That's the way it is.
Well, on that point, if you're making $216,000 a year, are you wealthy? That's the kind of the floor for the top tax bracket. Are you wealthy making that kind of money?
You're doing better than me, and I think they pay enough already. But
are they wealthy?
Well, I don't think so because everyone in this country spends to their limit. I mean, if you're making $216,000 a year, you probably have like a $700,000-$800,000 house. You got a Mercedes. You know what I mean? So I guess you look wealthy, but it's all on payments. You're still maxed out like everybody else.
Everybody's maxed out. Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, yep. Love his calls. You know why? Because he's such a ray of sunshine. That's why. Ian in Brockville, you're on City News. Ian.
2 peas in a pod, Rob. I love that guy. He's awesome.
Yeah. Can the Conservative government balance the budget in 10 years and not make any cuts?
It's doable, but at the end of the day, we both know we all know what's going to end up happening. Cuts are going to have to be made. I'm just hopeful they're not going to be made in areas that are going to really upset the people who don't like voting for that side of things. But yeah, there's going to have to be some cuts at the given.
All right. What do you think about the government cracking down on the flipping of homes? Do you think the government should be doing that?
Well, as someone who works for Farmer Joe quite a bit, I hate the fact that I'm the first guy on his land once it gets sold to the city. But yeah, unless we're landlocked out and the world's running out of places to grow food, someone please explain to me why a home renovator, who we all know our fair share of, goes into a place, takes a big risk. They're always taking a risk, and they come out on top most of the time if they're good at what they do. But explain to me how that's any of the government's business. Like, unless we're actually shy housing. And well,
actually, they're calling it predatory, that it's predatory behavior.
Oh, yeah, don't get me wrong.
Driving up the price of homes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it. Again, that can all be fixed based on what a lot of other people are saying this morning. I fully agree. We just need to build more houses. I mean, how many houses do you see that just I have one on my street, been sitting there forever for sale. Nobody wants to buy it and put the money into it. So if that law comes into effect, well, now that contractor can't just go in there and fix that crappy house in my subdivision. I got to wait till some homeowner decides to buy it and do it, or the government decides to go in there and take control. No, just leave it the way it is. It's fine.
All right. Okay. If you're making $216,000 a year, I bring this up because there's special tax treatment being proposed in the Liberal platform for people who are in the highest tax bracket, qualify for the highest tax bracket, which starts at about $216,000 a year. Do you consider someone making that kind of money wealthy?
They're definitely wealthier than me, but I would consider them wealthy. But again, going back to some of your other callers who had kind of stole my thunder a tiny bit, it's the loopholes. I watch a lot of, I'm not a huge, big guy. I'm the flip phone guy, going back to yesterday's caller there. Yeah, I'm the 29-year-old flip phone owner. But I do watch a lot of stuff online, real estate moguls, Grant Cardone, I mean, you name them, and they're actually happy to show you what they get away with. It's they get taxed enough. It's the loopholes. They don't complain about the taxation. You don't hear them complain very much because it doesn't stress them out. It's the amount of loopholes that just they recoup that at the end of the day, or at least the bulk of it.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Ian. Yep. Love your call. Yep. Just on this balancing the budget, I guess 10 years. Okay. Give O'Toole credit for having a timeline. 10 years. It doesn't come across to me as particularly ambitious, but it's better than what's on offer from the competition, because the Liberals have no timeline, and the NDP always promises to outspend every one of them, right? I think O'Toole probably remembers very well the failed campaign of 2014 and Tim Hudak, who was leader of the Ontario PCs, and the Liberals were not a popular party, being led by Kathleen Wynne at the time. The election was there for the taking in Ontario, and the Liberals took it, won a very surprising majority, because the Hudak campaign blew itself up because it promised to do what? Cut. It promised to do cuts. Cut program spending, cut 100,000 jobs from the government payroll. So maybe O'Toole and his people, they know they can't balance the budget in 10 years without cutting something. But if they are going to cut something, they're certainly not going to tell anyone during an election campaign that they're going to cut something. That's for darn sure. Become, Tim Hudak 2.0. Not a chance. 3 election questions. Do you think a conservative government can balance the budget in 10 years without making any cuts? Should the next government crack down on those house flippers? And is someone making $216,000 a year wealthy if you make that kind of money? Are you wealthy? Mike in Stittsville. Mike, good morning. You're on City News.
Hey,
Mike,
good morning. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you for calling.
Yeah.
Do you think a conservative government could balance the budget in 10 years without making any cuts?
So the pandemic being, I guess, still the elephant in the room, I'd say maybe not quite 10 years, but I bet he makes a decent dent in it. Conservatives seem to have a knack for this sort of thing. But there probably would be some cuts. Maybe a lot of people might not even notice. Who knows? Lots of previous callers have given some pretty good examples of how they may do this. I think he'll move the needle to the point of being forgiven if they don't hit it in 10 years, if they get 10 years. I guess, Trudeau keeps getting to come out saying, we need to continue the work we've started when he hasn't actually started anything. So I guess we'll see how it goes.
All right. On house flipping, should the next government crack down on that? People flipping homes?
Not flipping, no.
No?
I mean, I lived in Vancouver for about 13 years before coming back to the capital region. And flipping, in a lot of ways, keeps neighborhoods from basically turning bad. You do often see people flipping houses in already nice neighborhoods. So, I mean, you're talking... modest profit, I guess. Like, they make a pretty good living. The issue they've had there for years is always the offshore money buying up homes and leaving them vacant. Brand new condos being built where half of the units are sold to people overseas who never actually live in them. And then realtors go on the radio complaining that there's not enough product on the market for the buyers, blah, 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 and they used to actually go on the radio and say, call us. We have a database full of Chinese buyers, waiting to buy your home. Sell now, sell now. And then eventually that became very taboo, and they stopped doing it. But I mean, it still happens.
Okay.
So yeah, I would definitely. Sorry, I'm long-winded, but I would say no. I wouldn't do anything about that.
Is someone who makes $216,000 a year wealthy?
After taxes? Not at all. See what I did there, Jagmeet? I'm pretty tired of hearing the NDP tagline about the ultra rich pay their fair share, blah blah blah. The only smart thing Jagmeet Singh has done, at least this year, is to show up to his little campaign stuff, that his blingy Rolex for his announcements, and not getting not spotted at work in his fancy car. But I would say after taxes, I'd say, like someone said, you're comfortable, but I wouldn't definitely not say you're wealthy. You're wealthier than me, but you're not wealthy.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Thanks. You for your call. Yeah, sure. Just on that last question. I bring this up because it's in the Liberal platform that was released yesterday, and it's kind of their version of taxing the rich, in quotation marks, the rich. It's in their it's near the very end of their platform, and this is what it says. I'm quoting here: create a minimum tax rule so that everyone who earns enough to qualify for the top tax bracket pays at least 15% each year. The tax rate paid by people earning less than $49,000, removing their ability to artificially pay no tax through excessive use of deductions and credits. That's what it says in the Liberal platform, okay? So if you're making enough money that you qualify for the top income tax bracket, the Liberals say we're going to find a way, if we're not already, I suspect they are already, we're going to find a way to take at least 15% of your income. And that top tax bracket starts with an income of $216,000 a year. So I guess the Liberals are saying, if you're making that kind of money, you are going to pay at least the same amount of income tax as someone making less than $49,000 a year, which, of course, is going to sound fair to everyone. I find it interesting. It also says, through the excessive use of deductions and credits. And yet the term tax credit appears in the Liberal platform 29 times. Maybe that's excessive. Maybe it's excessive for a political party to promise 24 tax credits. And maybe it's not excessive for people to take advantage of all the tax credits that are created by the government. But this is what the Liberals have put in the window that kind of says, we're class warriors, too, and we don't like rich people either. Because Jagmeet Singh is gaining on them in the polls, especially in BC, doing very well in BC. And going after the rich is a big theme for the NDP. But at $216,000 a year, are you rich? Are you wealthy? Chris in Canada, good morning. You're on City News. Chris?
Good morning, Rob. The unions are going to hate it, but the Conservatives can certainly do what they're talking about. If they don't replace the retiring people in the next 10 years and massive wage freezes across the board, that saves a lot of money right there.
But wouldn't a wage freeze be a cut? If you say we're in an inflationary environment where inflation is 3% a year and wages are frozen at 0% a year, then isn't that a cut in wages for people?
Well, I guess if you could spin it that way, yeah, but
how do you think the Liberals would spin it?
They love to spin stuff.
Right. Yeah. So do you think a Conservative government could balance the budget in 10 years and not make any cuts?
Yeah, I don't look at attrition as cuts.
You don't look at it as true? Yeah, well, okay, fair enough, yeah.
If you have a government department of 20 people doing the work of 4, when 10 or 11 of them leave, you've already saved on some of that money.
All right. What should we do with house flipping? Should we do anything?
I don't think we should. They already have enough rules and regulations, and, you've brought it up many times. It's the municipalities that are stopping the further growth of housing for people that are looking for them.
Okay. If you make $216,000 a year, are you wealthy?
I guess it's contextually. If you live in Carleton Place or Carp, $200,000 is probably a lot of money, but not in Toronto or Vancouver.
It depends on where you live. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a great point. That's such a great point,
Thanks,
Chris. Thank you. Yeah, $216,000 a year, you're going to live like a king on Cape Breton Island. Yorkville? Not so much. 10:46. Be right back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
I'm blessed to be married to someone who is a scientist and spent a lot of time following what was happening over in China ahead of time. So he did give us the heads up that this was coming. Not that we believed him right off the bat, but when it did happen very, very quickly, we were prepared. We had hand sanitizer and we were set up to not close our doors. So we locked the kitchen down at Wellington Street, but we left this kitchen open. We put in protocols immediately. We only allowed our very small crew of 4 or 5 people in at the time. No deliveries were allowed to come in or out of the building without, they just weren't allowed in and out of the building. So we met them at the loading dock and had very strict protocols in place right away. We had masks and hand sanitizer and the whole thing. So we're very lucky from that perspective, and we're able to, learn as we went as far as doing small, individually packed caterings, the frozen soup program, food for the Ottawa mission. So we didn't have to close the kitchen and then learn how to reopen it. We just were able to modify and shift as we needed to. Because of our partnership with the Ottawa mission, we were able to very quickly help support them. They were able to send us some product and some supplies, so it wasn't a burden on our business, and we were able to supply the staffing and the packaging to help produce that when they needed it the most. And we produced about 1,400 meals a week to complement their meals, and we started our soup program right away. We realized very quickly that there was a need in the community to get together and all work together, not only to support local, but also just to support all the people that were suddenly in a position of, being locked down and not being able to get out. So by starting that soup program, our community, our clients got online and started making donations for the soups, and we were able to produce the soups and get them back out to people that needed it. We're right now currently making 150 liters of soup per week, but we've made, I would say, 5,000 or 6,000, easily since the pandemic. Probably more. I'd have to do the math, but lots. I think everybody in the city has to be very aware of how blessed we were to have great weather this summer and people were able to get out and about, and that's going to shift. So we do have to be much more aware of who our most vulnerable is, and I really think we have to work together as groups. There are so many organizations in the city that are doing something and contributing and working together, and I think it doesn't matter who, but see what you can do to just step up and help them, whatever it is, whether it's driving or delivering food, or someone has extra zucchini in their garden, or if they can afford to donate some money to any of these organizations. I just think we all have to work together. We're smarter and wiser than we were the first time.
The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
3 election questions. Can a Conservative government really balance the budget in 10 years without making any cuts? Aaron O'Toole says they can do it. Should the next government crack down on flipping homes, the flipping of homes, buying fixer-uppers, selling them for a profit? Is someone making $216,000 a year wealthy? If you make that kind of money, are you wealthy? Just on getting tough on the flippers. I'd like to get your take on. The NDP has it in its platform, wants to go after the flippers. This was the Canadian Press earlier in the week. The NDP leader promised Tuesday to crack down on big money house flippers, increasing the taxable amount of capital gains profits from 50 to 75%. Said his plan would target wealthy speculators who buy affordable homes, renovate them quickly, and resell them for a profit while using what he describes as the capital gains loophole to not pay their fair share of taxes. That's the NDP platform. Now, this has been an issue that hasn't been really going well for the Liberals because they have a candidate running in Vancouver-Granville, which is the riding that was once represented by Jody Wilson-Raybould. And the Liberal candidate's name now is Tlaib Nurmohamed. And our sister station in Vancouver broke this story. News 1130 reported this week that he has bought and sold 21 homes within a year of buying them, since 2005. Quote, according to documents obtained by News 1130, Nurmohamed has sold 42 properties within Metro Vancouver within the last 17 years, holding 30 of them for less than 2 years. And the tech executive made a tidy profit along the way, making $4.9 million in the process, a remarkable $3.7 million of which he's bagged in the last 6 years. Housing activists has labeled his real estate activity consistent with flipping behavior, in which a person buys a home only to sell it a short time later for a profit. Flipping has been criticized as one of the contributing factors rising home prices in Metro Vancouver throughout the country. All right? Should we get tough on that kind of thing? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And if you make $216,000 a year, they're coming after you for taxes, more taxes. If you're making that much money, are you rich? Are you wealthy? Todd in Perth. Good morning, Todd.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, sir. Do you think the Conservative government can balance the budget in 10 years without any cuts?
I'm going to say no, but I do believe that, maybe this isn't a popular answer, but we do need some cuts. I mean, we've spent more money in the history, ever than the history of this country. We need to get things back to more normal, so to speak, spending-wise. As far as the flippers, I'm going to say no, leave them alone. We need supply. We need supply to balance the market.
Okay. If you make $216,000 a year, would you say you're wealthy?
I would say if you make that every year, as a business owner, there may be years where I might hit that, but that's not what I make every year.
Right.
If you make that kind of money for 20 years, you build wealth, and yes, you're wealthy. But, if you hit that once every 10 years, I would think you're living a pretty average life.
Pretty average life. Okay, interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Todd, for your call from Perth today. Beautiful Perth. In Almont, Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir. Nice to hear from you. Do you think the Conservative government can balance the budget without making any cuts?
Well, let's say it this way. I trust them to at least try.
Okay. But do you believe them? But do you believe you could actually do it, though? Because it kind of sounds like the budget will balance itself. The budget will balance itself. The budget will balance
Well, if there's growth, and even though growth is down, but at the same time, you have to have the willpower to do it. And we've seen the other guys, they've just ignored it and they've carried on.
All right, fair enough. Okay. Do you think we should do something about people who flip homes? Flip homes. What do you think?
Well, the amount of houses that particular candidate flipped over the period of time that he flipped them is simply astounding, actually. And, frankly, we should go after offshore wealth, for Christ's sakes.
Right.
People hiding
well,
their
they say
money
they're going to do that, too. They say they're going to do that, too. Yeah,
I think that's a good idea. As far as flipping houses concerned, well, basically we've driven our kids off the market. They can't buy a house now. It's too expensive.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So the practice should be looked at, I think.
Should be looked at, okay. If you're making $216,000 a year, are you wealthy? Consider that to be wealthy. Yeah, you do. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Doesn't mean you got to be forced to pay more taxes because there's no motivation to make more money.
Well, they're coming after people who are in that tax bracket. Certainly, they're taking a good long look at people who are making that kind of money. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for your call. On house flipping, the Liberals say they will, quote, establish an anti-flipping tax on residential properties requiring properties to be held at least for 12 months. If you don't hold the property for at least 12 months, you'd have to pay a tax. So I guess, what I could see happening, David? I'm going to hold on to this house for 12 months and 24 hours.
What? No, you don't think people would do that.
Oh, absolutely people would do that.
That doesn't sound like something people would
avoid paying
do.
a tax, right? The platform doesn't mention how much the tax would be. However, it's kind of shall we say, vague on that. It's not illegal. Some people make a fine living doing this, right? It's a good way to make an income. Good side hustle for some people. For a lot of people, they're playing with the bank's money anyway. Keeps a lot of people busy, real estate agents, real estate lawyers, home inspectors, bankers, tradespeople, right? Doing the renovations. And, well, Ian Lee said yesterday what you're doing is you're upgrading the existing housing stock through the free market. It's the essence of the free market. You're buying something for a nickel, trying to sell it for a dime. But, I don't know where you come down on it. A lot of issues at play there with house flipping. It's more than just people making big money in a relatively short period of time. It's about urban planning and gentrification and pricing people out of their neighborhoods. Affordability brings into a lot of other issues into play as well. Should the next government get tough on people who flip homes for a living, or do it as a side hustle? Let's take one more call before the news at 11 o'clock. Justin has called in.
Yes,
You're on
hello.
City News. Good morning. Nice to hear from you.
Good to hear from you.
Now, do you think the Conservatives can balance the budget in 10 years without cutting anything?
I'm weary of any political party that says they can balance a budget beyond a mandated term. Canada, we have a maximum 4-year term. Anyone who can make a promise beyond that, to me, it's not even worth the airtime.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, right? So, yeah, you went in 4-year mandate, but nothing dictates you're going to have that majority beyond that 4 years. Look
Sure,
where
sure.
we are now.
And who knows, 10 years from now? Who knows what's going to happen 10 days from now, let alone 10 years from now, right?
Right,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, good point, sir. Very good.
Delta.
Flipping the homes, sir. Where are you on that issue?
So my concern with flipping homes is if you have the wherewithal, the financial standing to make that investment, go for it. I'm more concerned about the actual code and making sure the houses are done properly to code, etc. If you're taking, to your point,
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Encore Ottawa, a series of pre-recorded concerts featuring 20 of Ottawa's amazing musicians, all recent recipients of the Ottawa Music Development Fund. We are so happy to bring together all this talent onto this beautiful stage, the Shankman Arts Centre, in presenting this concert series for you. We couldn't do this without the City of Ottawa, the Shankman Arts Centre, Rogers TV, and Apartment 613, and the Ottawa Music Industry Coalition.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
This is Rogers TV Ottawa.
Bon matin à tous. My name is Jason Haug, and I will be your moderator for today. Je m'appelle Jason Haug et je serai votre modérateur aujourd'hui. Thank you for joining us for today's media availability on COVID-19. Merci de vous joindre à ce point de presse au sujet de la COVID-19. The view who is speaking in Zoom, please put your view on speaker view instead of gallery view. The button for this is located on the top right corner of the Zoom video screen. Veuillez changer votre écran en mode speaker en anglais pour pouvoir mieux voir les porte-paroles. Ce bouton est situé en haut à la droite de votre écran. Reporters with accessibility needs can pin the interpreters, Christopher and Hélène, or follow along on YouTube. Les journalistes ayant des besoins en matière d'accessibilité peuvent épingler les interprètes, Hélène ou Christopher, ou suivre la diffusion YouTube. Today we'll be hearing remarks from nos porte-paroles aujourd'hui seront Councillor Keith Eglai, Chair of Ottawa's Board of Health, Conseiller Keith Eglai, Président, Conseil de Santé, Santé publique Ottawa. Dr. Vera Etches, Medical Officer of Health, Ottawa Public Health. Dr. Vera Etches, Médecin-Chef en Santé publique, Santé publique Ottawa. And Dr. Brent Malachny, Deputy Medical Officer of Health, Ottawa Public Health. Dr. Brent Malachny, Médecin-Chef adjoint en Santé publique, Santé publique Ottawa. Following the remarks, we will take questions from the media. A friendly reminder to please keep your microphone on mute until I invite you to ask your question. Veuillez désactiver votre microphone jusqu'au moment de poser votre question. I'll now hand it over to Chair Eglai. Chair, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Bonjour, Kwe. I want to start off by thanking the media once again for assisting us in getting vital information out to the community around our continuing issues with COVID-19 in the city. We're here today to provide an update on COVID-19 in Ottawa and our progress with vaccinations. But first, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that yesterday was Overdose Awareness Day, an annual campaign to end overdose, remember without stigma those who have died, and acknowledge the grief of the family and friends left behind. To help bring awareness to this serious public health issue, an event was held at City Hall yesterday, and I'd like to thank the organizers for their tremendous work in coordinating it. But I'd also like to take a moment to recognize our partners in the community and health sectors, including harm reduction advocates, for their ongoing dedication and efforts to improve health for those people using substances and their families. It is vitally important that we continue to advocate for systematic changes to be made at all levels of government to better support everyone in our community. I'd also like to take some time to recognize yesterday's provincial announcement regarding the implementation of a vaccination program for higher risk settings in Ontario. It is hoped that this program will help prevent further economic and social disruptions in the weeks ahead. This morning, Ottawa Public Health has also released guidance for how to develop and implement workplace vaccination policies to better support local employers. I encourage all employers to view the policy on OPH's website. In addition to this, OPH has updated its existing employee immunization policy with a new requirement for all employees to provide proof of full vaccination against COVID-19. With increasing numbers of new COVID-19 infections, and with the highly transmissible Delta variant now in our community, the need to protect and support the health of both employees and residents must remain our primary concern. Vaccines are proving to prevent infections, to be highly effective against serious COVID-19 infection and decreased transmission of the virus, making them an important support for our occupational health and safety. Later, we'll be hearing from Dr. Etches about the increase in the number of people testing positive for COVID-19 in Ottawa. We can understand how this may add stress to families already anxious about the beginning of the school year. While there are many things outside of our control as individuals, there are also many things we can do to protect ourselves and our loved ones from COVID-19. As a community, we need to continue to do our part to keep COVID rates down so we can keep the virus from being introduced into school settings. With the fall season in our sights, and with the more transmissible Delta variant in our community, Dr. Etches and Ottawa Public Health are encouraging everyone to take what steps they can to prevent transmission. Get immunized if you haven't already. Maintain public health measures like masking and distancing. and limit your number of close contacts, particularly indoors. By practicing these actions together as a community, we can limit the extent of transmission and protect ourselves and others, including our children who cannot yet be immunized. Ottawa Public Health remains committed to supporting schools to stay open and to maintain a safer environment for students and staff. Finally, I'd like to thank Ottawa Public Health and the City of Ottawa staff for the continued hard work in responding to the pandemic and the vaccination campaign. This includes the development and implementation of local policies, of which more details will be provided during this media availability. I will now pass it over to Dr. Etches for her update.
Well, hello. Thank you, Chair. Hello, bonjour, and Quay. This is a stressful time. And with the start of school and more requirements from the province, and I know that we can make it through this. So I am here today to provide an update on what we see from a public health perspective about keeping the COVID-19 situation manageable this fall. Over the last several days, we have seen an increase in the number of people testing positive for COVID-19. There were 207 new people tested positive in the previous 7 days. The percent positive, that's people going for a test who end up to have COVID, it has been higher recently than it has been in many months. And the level of the virus in the wastewater is fluctuating. What we know is a really important and key measure to watch, the hospitalizations, is that they have gone up. So we are experiencing a resurgence in Ontario that is driven by a highly transmissible Delta variant. Nous faisons face à une résurgence en Ontario qui est principalement causée par le variant Delta, hautement transmissible. So yesterday, our epidemiology team released the latest breakdown of people testing positive for COVID and hospitalizations for COVID by vaccine status. And so we see that the rate of new people testing positive in the unvaccinated population who's eligible for COVID vaccine, it's 41.3 per 100,000. While the rate of new people testing positive among people fully vaccinated is 2.7 per 100,000. So it means the risk of COVID infection among the unvaccinated population eligible for a vaccine is 15 times higher than it is for the fully vaccinated population. And we'd love to see the unvaccinated population become protected with the vaccine. Ceci veut dire que le risque d'une infection de la COVID-19 parmi la population non vaccinée qui est éligible à recevoir un vaccin contre la COVID-19 est 15 fois plus haut que le risque d'infection chez la population entièrement vaccinée. C'est important pour nous de protéger cette population pour eux. The good news is that we continue to make progress on our vaccine rollout. To date, 79% of people born in 2009 or earlier, so people 12 and above, are fully vaccinated in Ottawa. And this represents 69% of the total population. Ottawa Public Health is continuing to work hard to reach the remaining eligible population, to remove barriers, to address questions, to make accessing a vaccine as easy and convenient as possible. We understand there's hesitancy. There's a lot of disinformation. People have questions, and we're here to help answer them. So if you haven't been vaccinated yet, you are very welcome to reach out to us. You're very welcome in our clinics. Everyone will be happy to see you. And our work to continue to address people's needs and barriers to vaccination is reflected in the update on vaccination coverage by neighborhood that was published yesterday. So we see since our initial report, which included data as of August 2nd, we're now seeing improvements in both first and second dose uptake across all Ottawa neighborhoods. In August alone, we saw an increase of 7 percentage points in full vaccination coverage, and 22 neighborhoods saw an 8 or a 9 percentage point increase in full vaccination coverage. So to see more of this data by neighborhood, you can visit the neighborhoodstudy.ca. The link is neighborhoodstudy.ca. Ottawa Public Health is supportive of policies that increase immunization coverage in our city, and we support the province's announcement to require proof of vaccination to access certain businesses and settings as outlined in the provincial announcement. Santé publique encourage et est reconnaissante des politiques qui augmentent la couverture vaccinale dans notre ville. Nous appuyons l'annonce provinciale de devoir demander pour une preuve de vaccination afin d'accéder à certaines entreprises et espaces tels que spécifiés dans l'annonce provinciale. All Ottawa residents who have received 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine currently have access to a paper or a PDF vaccine receipt that includes all the relevant information to prove that they are fully vaccinated. So individuals can provide this proof of immunization by downloading or printing their vaccine receipt from the provincial booking portal, or by calling the provincial vaccine booking line at 1-833-943-3900. And I want to let people know that you can also visit one of Ottawa Public Health's neighborhood vaccination hubs if you don't have access to a printer. Our public health staff will be happy to help you get a proof of vaccination. And if you need a vaccine, again, it doesn't hurt to say that Ottawa Public Health is offering vaccine clinics daily at community clinics and neighborhood vaccination hubs. There are no appointments necessary. You can drop in, and more information is on our website. So our goals remain the same in this pandemic response. We are working to decrease death, and we have seen the great effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines in achieving this. We're aiming to keep a functioning healthcare system for all of the healthcare needs that people have, and to avoid the societal disruption of schools closing or a lockdown. And so approaching September with caution is key. In addition to getting fully vaccinated, we can achieve our goals by maintaining the public health measures that we've come to know so well and choosing safer activities. So this means gathering in well-ventilated areas, especially outdoors, keeping gatherings small, avoiding large crowds where masking and distancing can't be maintained. Nos objectifs demeurent de réduire le nombre de décès, et nous voyons l'efficacité des vaccins contre la COVID-19 pour y parvenir. De maintenir un système de soins de santé fonctionnel pour tous les besoins en soins de santé, et éviter la perturbation sociétale de la fermeture des écoles et le confinement. So with the latest COVID numbers and the modeling that are concerning, I'm still hopeful. I'm hopeful because we've beaten the odds before. I've seen Ottawa persevere. I've seen people come together as a community while staying 2 meters apart to support one another. The Delta variant is presenting challenges, but we've learned a lot in the last 18 months. We have the tools, we have the knowledge and resilience to get through this next phase. Thank you, merci and miigwech. Pass it over to Dr. Malachny.
Thank you, Dr. Etches. The province's announcement to require proof of vaccination is another step that will help us get to at least 90% vaccination coverage here in Ottawa, as well as reduce the risk of transmission in higher risk settings. This new policy will cover those who attend and access certain businesses and services. In addition to the provincial announcement about vaccine certificates, another type of policy that will help reduce transmission of COVID-19 is about promoting vaccine coverage among employees and workplaces. When it comes to businesses and workplaces, Ottawa Public Health strongly recommends that all Ottawa employers implement workplace vaccination policies for staff to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission. To support this recommendation, we have released guidance available on our website to assist employers in the development and implementation of their workplace vaccination policies as part of their COVID-19 safety planning. En plus de l'annonce provinciale concernant les certificats de vaccination, un autre type de politique qui contribuera à réduire la transmission de la COVID-19 concerne la promotion de la couverture vaccinale parmi les employés dans les lieux de travail. Santé publique Ottawa recommande fortement à tous les employeurs d'Ottawa de mettre en œuvre des politiques de vaccination du personnel en milieu de travail afin de réduire le risque de transmission de la COVID-19. Employers have a responsibility to maintain a safe work environment for their employees. Supporting employees to get fully vaccinated is the best way to help protect them from the risks of COVID-19, prevent outbreaks, and build confidence in the workplace as we face a more transmissible Delta-fueled resurgence in our community. When developing a vaccine policy, employers should continuously assess the risk of transmission at the workplace by considering several factors. For example, are workers required to be in close contact with others in their place of work or while performing their work duties? Can workers keep at least 2 meters apart while performing their work? How long and how often are workers in close contact with other workers or customers? And what is the size of the workforce and what is the vaccination rate? Ottawa Public Health has used a similar approach in the development of our own workplace vaccination policy. For our organization, we gave particular consideration to the vulnerability of many of our clients to whom we provide direct services, the need to maintain our operations throughout a resurgence, and the effectiveness of vaccination compared to relying on testing. As such, we are updating our existing employee immunization policy to include the new requirement for all OPH employees to provide proof of vaccination, full vaccination against COVID-19. Supports are available for vaccination in workplaces, community organizations, places of worship, and other groups that can contact Ottawa Public Health to request a mobile vaccination team to administer first and second doses of the COVID-19 vaccine on site at their own location. Please visit our website or call 613-580-6744 to request a mobile vaccination team. Du soutien est disponible pour la vaccination au lieu de travail. Les organismes communautaires, les lieux de culte et d'autres groupes qui peuvent communiquer avec Santé publique Ottawa pour demander à une équipe de vaccination mobile d'administrer les premières et deuxièmes doses de vaccin contre la COVID-19 sur place à leur propre établissement. Veuillez visiter notre site web ou composer le 613-580-6744 pour demander une équipe de vaccination mobile. Of course, in addition to implementing a vaccine policy, workplaces must continue to review and update their COVID-19 safety plans as required. This is particularly important considering the changing context due to the Delta variant. More information on COVID-19 safety plans can be found on our website dedicated to businesses and workplaces. Now, I've heard from some parents and guardians who are concerned about a return to in-person learning and, like us, want to ensure a return to school that is as safe as possible. Layers of protective measures will again be important this year. This includes daily screening, masking, distancing, as well as our investigation and control measures if someone with COVID-19 has been at school. I want to remind parents and caregivers to continue daily screening for COVID-19 symptoms. Ottawa Public Health is currently updating our screening tool following provincial changes. In the meantime, parents can use the province's school and childcare screening tool. Now, screening will be a little bit different this year. The Ontario government recently removed some COVID-19 symptoms from their screening tool, including having a runny nose or sore throat. The symptoms that remain on the tool include fever and or chills, cough or a barking cough, shortness of breath, decrease or loss of taste or smell. Our advice to parents and guardians is if you or your child experience any of the symptoms listed in the screening tool, do not go to work or school. Seek testing right away and remain in isolation until the result is available. I want to remind parents and caregivers that there are several sites across the city that will test children. A full list of testing sites is available on our website and on ottawatestingupdate.ca. Le conseil que nous donnons aux parents et aux tuteurs est le suivant. Si vous ou votre enfant présentez l'un des symptômes énumérés dans l'outil de dépistage, n'allez pas au travail ou à l'école. Faites-vous faire passer un test de dépistage pour la COVID-19 immédiatement et restez en isolement jusqu'à ce que le résultat soit disponible. Je veux rappeler aux parents et aux proches aidants qu'il y a plusieurs endroits que vos enfants peuvent faire passer un test de dépistage pour la COVID-19. Une liste complète de ces sites est disponible sur notre site web et sur ottawatestingupdate.ca/fr. Additionally, new this year, take-home tests will begin rolling out across many schools in Ottawa, making it easier and more convenient for parents to test their children. More information on what to expect for testing this school year can be found on ottawatestingupdate.ca. Now, if you or your child experiences any other symptoms of illness, like a runny nose or a sore throat, you do not need to seek testing. However, you do need to stay home until you're feeling better. Si vous ou vos enfants présentez n'importe quel autre symptôme de maladie, comme un mal de gorge ou le nez qui coule, vous n'avez pas besoin d'aller faire passer un test de dépistage, mais vous devez rester à la maison jusqu'à ce que vous vous sentez mieux. Daily screening for students and staff is an important component for keeping schools as safe as possible this fall. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you, Dr. Malakny. I will now invite each media agency in reverse alphabetical order to ask their questions. Please remember that you have one question and one follow-up. Nous allons maintenant répondre aux questions des médias en ordre alphabétique inverse. Chacun pourra poser une question ainsi qu'une question de suivi. We will start with TVA. Catherine Fortin, please go ahead. So that's just a call. I'm not seeing Catherine on the call, so we will go to Radio-Canada, Samuel Blais-Gauthier.
Oui, bonjour. Ma question est pour Dr. Etches et ça va toucher en fait les conseils scolaires. Donc, on peut comprendre que chacun des conseils scolaires ont leur propre, ont l'autorité d'imposer ou non la vaccination pour le personnel enseignant. Qu'est-ce que la santé publique recommande? Est-ce que la santé publique recommande la vaccination pour tout le personnel enseignant et le personnel de soutien dans les conseils scolaires?
C'est important pour tous les employeurs d'avoir une politique concernant la promotion de la vaccination et de faire l'évaluation concernant leur entreprise. C'est le même pour les conseils des écoles. Il y a différents aspects. Les conseils ont besoin de gérer leur opération et le demande du ministère de l'Éducation est la base concernant la politique et s'il y a une approche où on peut augmenter la demande pour le vaccin dans le cadre de leur employé, c'est aussi quelque chose que la santé publique peut soutenir. Mais mon collègue Dr. Brent Malakny a aussi travaillé avec les écoles et il a peut-être il a d'autres mots, mais je ne sais pas.
Oui, en fait, s'il pouvait répondre aussi là, à savoir, est-ce que vous recommandez ou pas, ou est-ce que les enseignants, selon vous, est-ce que ce serait sécuritaire? Est-ce que vous souhaiteriez que les enseignants et le personnel de soutien là, soient vaccinés dans les écoles?
C'est important que toute la population éligible pour un vaccin est vaccinée. Ça c'est notre but. Et il y a différentes méthodes d'augmenter le taux de vaccination et les politiques des employeurs sont importantes. Mais c'est aussi important de reconnaître que les écoles ont différents niveaux de protection. La vaccination, c'est important, mais aussi il y a d'autres pratiques qui ont contrôlé la transmission de COVID-19 dans les écoles l'année passée et pour cet automne. Premièrement, c'est impossible de dire trop souvent si vous êtes malade, si les employés sont malades, il est important qu'ils restent chez eux et faire un dépistage pour le COVID-19. Alors, chaque employeur a besoin d'évaluer les possibilités pour augmenter le taux de vaccination dans leur entreprise. Et Santé publique ici, nous avons les points d'accès, nous avons les cliniques mobiles, on peut ajouter, on a la vie et aujourd'hui on a créé plus de documentation qui peut guider les entreprises dans leur création de leur politique.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Etches et Samuel. On va maintenant, we're going to Elizabeth Payne with the Ottawa Sun.
Hi, thanks very much. I think this is a question for Dr. Etches. This is the second September that you have issued this warning about having to be careful and that we're facing possible increase in cases. And we've had the science table yesterday come out with models showing that the fourth wave could be worse than the third, very likely will. What is this school year looking like at this point compared to a year ago?
I do want to start again with my words of hope that we can keep this situation manageable through the fall. It will take work, but we have right now a very different situation, concerning the risk of death for older adults because of the vaccine and the high levels of vaccine coverage. There are still people at risk for hospitalization and death who are not vaccinated. We'd love to see them take advantage of that vaccine for that protection. And we know it's not perfect. That we do see with the Delta variant that it is posing challenges even to the vaccinated population. So that's where we have to use the other tools, which again, people in Ottawa bucked the trend last fall. They kept rates lower and even trending down through the autumn by using masks, by keeping distance, by choosing lower risk activities with fewer people involved with activities outdoors. So I think these are the tools we can use, I totally understand the stress of going back to school. I have my own children in contact school, and it's something we're going to continue to assess. What's happening in the schools is always a reflection of what's happening in the broader community. And so we will continue to see what needs to be done, to keep the COVID levels manageable, keep those schools open. And we know that, the very basics, again, really do work to keep COVID out of schools. If people are sick, to stay home and get tested. So we'll continue to evaluate as we go, and I do remain hopeful.
And can I ask you what Ottawa's own modeling is saying and how that compares to what the science table's modeling says about the coming months with the fourth wave and Delta?
We don't have Ottawa specific modeling into the fall. We have had the help of local modelers at different times during the pandemic. Mostly they've been predicting a bit on the hospitalizations, and the variables have changed with the vaccine. We don't have a model specific to Ottawa that's up to date because so much has improved in being able to predict how people testing positive even translates into hospitalizations, right? It's not the same. So we do look to the provincial modeling because we're one province, we're connected. What happens in Toronto affects what happens in Ottawa, for example. There's more traveling and connections between areas than there have been. So the modeling that we saw for the province of Ontario yesterday does give us pause. Because I don't think we've heard that message for a little while about the importance to, above and beyond getting vaccinated, think about the number of close contacts that we have and how we might reduce that. And so that's again what we're speaking to, how to practically do that this fall. I think people have done it before. It's remembering that there are lower risk activities that will reduce the opportunity for COVID to be transmitted, when we're not as close to as many people without masks indoors.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Joanne Lausius from Ottawa Citizen now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Dr. Etches, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about vaccination rates in some of the neighborhoods that where you'd seen a low uptake. What are the factors behind that?
So I spoke today about progress actually in each of those neighborhoods where we initially did see that coverage rates were lower. It was often related to communities that have less advantage. So communities where there is a greater rate of poverty, is some connection also not always, but to some neighborhoods where the percentage of newcomers or racialized populations are higher. These are populations that face greater barriers that may not have transportation or childcare or speak English or French as a first language, that are receiving potentially sometimes a lot of disinformation, promoting myths about vaccines. And so, our work has been to overcome all those different types of barriers by bringing the vaccine into neighborhood hubs, by going door to door, by working with community leaders who speak more languages. And we have seen the progress. I think that it is really encouraging. People are still coming forward for first doses, and the second doses have come up as well. So we'll continue on this path of working with neighborhoods and across Ottawa. I think we've seen every neighborhood, the vaccine rates are still going up. So I just do want to speak to people who aren't yet vaccinated. It's not too late. You're very welcome. We understand that people have barriers that have prevented them from being vaccinated to date. We understand there's questions. People need reliable information. They need time to talk it through. And so that's what we're here for, is to continue working with people to increase those immunization rates.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. On va maintenant à Émilie Pelletier, Le Droit.
Bonjour, hi. Moi aussi, mes questions sont pour la docteure Etches par rapport au taux de vaccination. À Ottawa, ça va bien. Dans la région de Leeds-Grenville, Lanark, ça va très bien. Dans l'Est ontarien. En fait, les régions les plus à l'est de la province, le taux de vaccination, ça va bien. À quoi on peut attribuer ceci au taux de vaccination? Puis, est-ce qu'il y a moyen de montrer l'exemple au reste de la province, selon vous?
C'est complexe. Il n'y a pas un facteur qui détermine le taux de vaccination. C'est clair que quand les gens ont des avantages comme la transportation, le temps d'être vacciné, ils comprennent le message, l'information, c'est plus facile. Le moyen salaire à Ottawa est plus haut, et c'est un aspect peut-être associé avec des opportunités d'avoir un vaccin plus facilement. Mais je voudrais dire merci à chaque personne à Ottawa qui a été vaccinée, et c'est comme un collectif ensemble qu'on peut gérer cette situation et trouver un meilleur avenir. Et ça prend cet soin aux autres, mais les vaccins sont aussi importants pour chaque personne qui sont immunisées. La protection est pour les individuels et ça aide aussi la communauté. Alors, oui, c'est pas clair exactement pourquoi, mais l'équipe avec la ville d'Ottawa, avec Tony Demonte et son équipe, avec nous, à Santé publique, beaucoup de partenaires, les hôpitaux, les soins de santé communautaire, les partenaires dans la communauté, tout le monde travaille fort, et aussi faire que reconnaître que ce programme est la priorité pour aider notre population maintenant. Alors, il y a beaucoup de travail. Je peux juste aussi mentionner ça en dessous les chiffres. C'est clair, on a créé des cliniques grandes et accessibles. Et on a communiqué avec tous nos partenaires dans le système de la santé d'aider les médecins de famille. Ça prend toute la communauté. C'était un résultat bon pour toute la communauté. Et on continue, c'est pas assez aussi. Ça, c'est un message. On a besoin d'agiter les autres mesures. On peut continuer d'augmenter le taux.
Merci. Puis c'est justement ma prochaine question. Avec l'annonce du certificat de vaccination d'hier, est-ce que vous pensez qu'on peut s'attendre à une hausse de la prise de rendez-vous dans les prochaines semaines à Ottawa, même plus que 90%, ce qu'on vise?
Oui, je pense que ça va aider le taux de vaccination parce qu'on peut voir déjà une augmentation dans les rendez-vous pour les cliniques. Les gens qui ont présenté à notre clinique hier, le chiffre augmente déjà. C'est le but. Et j'imagine que ça va aider avec cette cible de plus de 90.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. We'll go now to Craig Lord with Global News.
Thank you. Dr. Etches and also Keith Egley, I heard you both mention the importance of smaller gatherings ahead of the fall to keep transmission down. I'm curious if you'd like to see restrictions probably at the provincial level put back in place to limit gatherings and discourage super spreader events during the fourth wave.
I can start. I feel like, at this point in Ottawa, the COVID situation is manageable and we have the tools. I think we need to monitor the situation and evaluate as we go if more is needed. We know it's not just the size of the gatherings, it's whether people can distance, whether people are wearing masks, whether they're outdoors. And so it's putting these variables together. We want to keep choosing the lower risk activities. And size is one where we know people can make the choice to have fewer contacts. I don't know if others want to add.
Building on what you said, that the situation in Ottawa now is manageable, as you put it. Throughout the last year and a half, we've achieved a lot in Ottawa through cooperation and collaboration, through people, hearing advice given by Dr. Etches and her team and looking at it and saying, that's a reasonable path forward and that's something I can do voluntarily for myself and for my community. So we've seen good voluntary compliance with messaging from public health, as opposed to the imposition necessarily of restrictions or limits. Our approach has always been to work with the community as much as we can. And I think this is another example of that. A lot of this, as we both said, is within your control, choices that you make. And we just would urge you to make the best choices that you can based on the science and the medical advice that public health can offer.
Thank you so much. Do you have a follow-up question, Craig, as well?
Yes, I think this would be for Dr. Etches. The 90% vaccination goal that we have, we're slowly ticking towards it. Do you have a timeline in mind for when you think it's conceivable that Ottawa could hit that 90% mark? Is it before the end of September, or what's your pace looking like if you were to forecast that out?
I have looked at that. The pace, if it continues as is, it would be around mid-October. And that's a bit late when you compare that to the modeling from the Ontario Science Table, that the resurgence is likely going to be here, third week of September or so. It is important that people are protected as soon as possible with the vaccine. And I am encouraged that this, the ongoing conversation about the value of vaccines, the support from policies, the different access in neighborhoods will increase the rate of uptake because we've seen more traffic to our website. We've seen more people walked into our clinics yesterday to be vaccinated. More bookings are happening. So I hope that we will see actually the uptake grow more rapidly than that. And again, it is important for us to encourage others who may not be vaccinated yet to hear them out, to understand where they're coming from. People have legitimate questions. This is a choice for each individual to make. Now there are some limitations. People choose not to be vaccinated. But ultimately, it's about protecting people from serious COVID illness, and everyone deserves that protection.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Josh Pringle, CTV News Ottawa next.
Thank you very much, and good morning. My question is for Dr. Etches. You've said a couple times the COVID-19 situation in Ottawa is manageable, and you're hopeful that we can get through this fourth wave. Given the modeling data that we saw yesterday showing a warning of a substantial fourth wave of the pandemic, are you hopeful that we can avoid another lockdown this fall?
Absolutely. This is what all of us are working for. I want to thank business owners actually specifically today, because they've worked so hard through this pandemic, adapting to a totally new situation, putting in safety plans. Today we're recommending that their safety plans include looking at vaccination policies. They're going to adapt to the requirements from the province for assessing vaccine status of their patrons. So I'm really I'm thankful for what businesses have done, and I know they're committed to ongoing good practices that help protect us and that help keep their businesses open. We have the same goal, and these policies are one extra step to assure that.
And my follow-up question, yesterday with the province announcing the vaccine passport that you'll need to show to get into non-essential businesses, you mentioned briefly that you've seen an uptick in people going to get a vaccine yesterday. Any idea how many new appointments or vaccines were received yesterday after this announcement? How many appointments were booked?
Yes, I probably can't be completely specific about the time frame after the announcement. I do think the team can probably provide that data after the media availability if you would like. It was a noticeable increase.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We'll now go to Alex Gouge from City News Ottawa.
Hello. My first question is for Dr. Etches. Given the fact that the Quebec vaccine passport system is already in effect, what's your thoughts on the fact that there's still just under 3 weeks until Ontario's goes into effect, given the relationship between Ottawa and Gatineau?
Well, I think we've seen before that it's really artificial to divide our community with the river. We all travel back and forth for work or for family and social reasons. And so I think in the end, what we are recommending on both sides of the river is that, first of all, be vaccinated. And then, the other measures are in place, right? To wear masks when you're indoors in public spaces, to use caution and distancing and be outdoors as much as you can. So I think we have then seen the COVID situation very similar in terms of rates and hospitalizations on both sides of the river. So I think we're heading towards a place where there's going to be more consistency in the requirements for businesses and access to businesses on both sides. But really all along, despite differences in provincial approaches to regulation, we've seen people really have similar outcomes.
And for my follow-up, do you feel like there's any gaps and anything missing in Ontario's proof of vaccination system that's coming?
When we're still digesting the details, and we haven't seen the regulations yet. Initially, was wondering about some of the larger gatherings outdoors, at sports events or music festivals where there are a large number of people still, and in crowded situations, that's one of the more higher risk settings for transmission of COVID. And so I think what I'm seeing, though, and recognizing is, while that wasn't specifically covered in the provincial program, that the enterprises involved in running festivals and sports networks have themselves stepped up to say that they will have vaccination policies in place. And so they are addressing those gaps. I want to thank them for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll finish off today with Kate Porter from CBC.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking our questions today. I have a couple for Dr. Etches. Just to jump off of Liz Payne's question earlier about this September versus last, Dr. Etches, some things are different. More kids in school, not virtual. Kids themselves are the under 12 unvaccinated populations. Sports teams are going again. I'm wondering, are you more or less concerned about kids this September, in this back to school than last, or any advice for them in particular?
What I'm even more convinced about this autumn is that students need to be in school in person for their overall health and well-being. I think we had more and more evidence grow over the course of last year about the harms that are done when children don't have the opportunity to be in school and in person. And so looking at the risk of COVID transmission is one aspect of assessing what's best for children's health, but we need to consider the other things that children need for their health. And so on whole, I very convinced that this is a good step to have children back in school. And then we need to use the tools that we have to decrease the risk of COVID transmission, always starting with what's happening outside the schools. What can we do as adults to protect children in schools? And here again, vaccination is the first answer, right? It's the best protection to stop COVID transmission. And after that, we have the other measures that adults can take. I do think we need to prioritize schools being open this fall by taking a look at the other places in the community where we can decrease COVID transmission. So some of these policies, some of the ongoing measures are important to be able to keep transmission low in schools. So the vaccination policies, the masking policies, all of these, and then our individual choices to choose lower risk activities. We can, prioritize the health of children this fall.
And the other topic I was wondering about, the tone of confrontations, I almost want to say, over vaccination has changed since earlier in the pandemic, and business owners were telling us yesterday, they're worried about staff having to face confrontations at the door over the vaccine passports. The policies that you lay out today mention employers possibly, putting people in different positions if they're not vaccinated. And I just wonder, if you could comment a bit about that tone and what advice you have for people given these interactions that might take place in light of all of this.
Sure. I hope you are hearing from me, understanding that some people are not vaccinated at this point and they have reasons, and I respect that. I respect people's choice to be vaccinated or not. And we need to help people with the barriers that they're facing to be vaccinated. And we need to show kindness to people who are not vaccinated yet, and each other, all of us. This is a hard time. Things have been moving fast, information changes. We need to support each other. And so what we see is that it is also important to protect the safety and security of people in our community by promoting higher rates of vaccination. And so, the requirement for entering into some non-essential businesses, I think that's the language the province was using. This is a helpful step to get the vaccination rates higher to protect the population. It doesn't require confrontation, in terms of, we're not asking businesses to be police. And businesses have gone through this before with the mask bylaw and masking requirements of the province. There is not an expectation that people are entering into a confrontation to, prohibit, with confrontation, people from entering businesses. We've seen throughout the pandemic, most people are doing the right thing. And so most people are vaccinated. Most people are going to show proof of vaccination. There will be medical exemptions. We are not asking businesses to be the judge of those medical exemptions. This is a transition period right now until we have a provincial system that's going to make it easier for businesses to verify vaccination status or exemption. But I expect that people will be reasonable as they have been through this pandemic. I'm asking people to be kind to the employees that are working in businesses where they're going to now need to ask you for proof of vaccination. It does require patience as businesses figure out how to do this and implement their processes.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. That is all the time that we have for today. C'est tout le temps dont nous disposons aujourd'hui. Thank you and have a great day. Merci. Nous vous souhaitons une bonne
Visit Rogers.com for more details.
When you're online, Rogers TV on YouTube shares news and events from your community, like messages from local leaders, updates on the latest health news, local business presenting their new offerings, and how our local communities are working their way through these unprecedented times. Visit and subscribe to Rogers TV on YouTube for the latest local information.
Bum, 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 bum. 20 bucks. 20 bucks. We're on the line for 20 bucks.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
I don't mean to brag, I'm the type, girl, you can have whatever you gon' like. Yeah, we do this every night. Yeah. Hey. Hey. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
This federal election, Canadians want to know what's next for Canada. For Rogers TV, the focus is on local candidates addressing local issues. Get to know the candidates running in your riding with Rogers TV's coverage of the local campaign. And on election night, find out what's next with Election 21, the local results. Visit rogerstv.com for local coverage details.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.